This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the North.
Good afternoon, members. You're very welcome. Meeting in the room, or joining us in the room today, is Trevor Lunn, Padraig Delargy and Diane Dodds. And members joining us remotely are John Stewart and Pat Sheehan. Okay, that's all I see so far. Members, this meeting will be recorded and broadcast through our Parliament buildings and online. Members are welcome to use their mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. Okay, if members are happy, can I proceed through the agenda? Okay, apologies have been received from Alex Easton. Do members know of any other apologies? No.
Chair, I'm sorry.
Emma Sheeran probably won't be here. She's not well at the moment.
Okay, we'll record her apologies then. Thank you. Chairperson's business. The first item of business is an update on the visit to May's Long Kesh site. Last Thursday, 3 members of the committee, Trevor Lunn, Emma Sheeran and myself, made a visit to May's Long Kesh, where we were conducted on a tour of the site, including the hangars housing the Ulster Aviation Society, the prison site, the Maroš showgrounds and the Econ Exhibition Centre. This was then followed by a presentation from the Chair of the Board of the May's Long Kesh Development Corporation. Members, this presentation and short summary of the trip are on pages 14 to 17 of the meeting pack. Members will know that the May's Long Kesh site is an important investment site for Northern Ireland. It is a 340 plus acre site situated in the Eastern Economic Corridor between Belfast and Dublin, serviced within close proximity to 4 ports and 3 airports. Therefore, it is of significant strategic importance to Northern Ireland. particularly around the area of economic development. And dare I say it, its significance has got even more valuable in terms of its geographical location as a result of the protocol in relation to the proximity of two major trading jurisdictions. The development of the site is frozen as a result of a political stalemate within the Executive Office. So, members, I think we need to try and find some sort of resolution. So there are a number of potential actions coming to us from the presentation, and they are listed in your pack. And I'm going to go through them. The first one is a suggestion that we write to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister to ask that a resolution be found with regard to the prison site itself. The second suggestion is to write to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister to request that, regardless of a resolution for the prison site, that other development be allowed to progress on the site. The third is to write to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister to request the decisions with regard to the site are transferred to the Mays Long Kesh Development Corporation Board. The fourth is to write to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister and the Minister for Infrastructure to consider bringing forward plans for a link road to the site. And then lastly, to write to the Department and ask that the lease agreement with the Ulster Aviation Society be changed as follows, because they were particularly concerned that they would like to have their lease renewed every 3 years instead of every 6 months, so that they can be allowed to advertise their tourism offer and the museum site that they have, with a significant number of planes in the museum. So those were the suggestions that were made to us throughout the presentation. I've really thought hard about this, since last Thursday, because it's just, it's such a major piece of infrastructure. It's a major investment site, and it's been stuck in stalemate since 2013. And my personal view is that the committee at present doesn't actually have enough information to take a view on these outlined options, because, in relation to restructuring and governance of the Mays Long Kesh site, we just don't have enough information. And it's clear that there needs to be a reboot to make progress, but we also need to recognise it would be actually wrong to respond to what is often just a political impasse with the Executive Office creating like a kind of quasi, quango, and passing over responsibility to that quango. This is a huge public asset, and we need to make sure that the structures are in place and there's detailed public accountability and around it. So my first thoughts is around the Strategic Investment Board. What is their role in this particular site? And I think that it's now time that we hear from them and how they would suggest that we would make plans going forward and progress the Mays Long Kesh and come up with maybe some governance proposals in and around it as well. So there's numerous thought processes in there, and I would like to hear from other committee members, is that a way that we should maybe try to progress, get more information? I'm also aware that the Development Corporation, in the process of the actual presentation, they have 4 vacancies within their board. All of the staff that work for them are part-timers. They haven't got the capacity to take over something of this magnitude. It really is, it is a role for the Strategic Investment Board of Northern Ireland to take something of this magnitude forward and to unlock the potential for the betterment of the people here. So that's kind of like a broad outline of where we're at with it. Trevor Lunn obviously was with us, so do you have anything that you want to add to that, Trevor?
Just on the Strategic Investment Board membership, Dr. Gregory is actually on it as a strategic advisor, and his email address is @SIBNI.
Yeah,
The back of his card it says Strategic Investment Board.
yeah.
So maybe they are represented already, are they?
Well, it's my understanding that he is in that role as a part-time chief executive,
Yeah.
but seconded or, from the Strategic Investment Board. So, while he was at the presentation there, I think that we need to hear directly from the chief executive of SIB just what their vision is for that site. Logistically, it's in a prime site for access to Dublin and to Belfast.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And it could have an important role to play.
well, you wouldn't need to convince me of that. I mean, my first involvement with that site was in the early 2000s, I think maybe 2002, in the Old Mays panel. And at that time, we did get a measure of agreement between the sporting bodies about the viability of the stadium on the site, which was torpedoed eventually, and after a few wasted years. Between that and 2013, there wasn't an open disagreement between OFM across the two parties. It was just known that there was, But after 2013, it was formalised by the actions that were taken. To me, I mean, I've always thought that the key to unlocking all this is around the issue of what we used to call the shrine to terrorism, visitor centre, the future of what's left of the prison buildings and how they're to be used, marketed, advertised, what story they're going to tell. That's the issue, and I think that's the one we should be pressing on, because that would certainly unlock. I don't think there'll be major disagreement about their actual commercial plans for the site. They're made public and properly discussed, but nothing gets past that particular issue. So if we could persuade them that the Mays Long Kesh Development Corporation could take over responsibility for that section, and that would perhaps take some of the politics out of it. And I think that would be a worthwhile avenue to go down if we can make any progress there. It is absolutely impressive. I mean, when you see around the place, look at the map, as you have said, Chair, it shouts at you. The museum, the Aviation Society is recognised now, and they told us this publicly. It's the best aviation display museum in the United Kingdom, and it's in the top 10 in the world, and that's how good it is. I went around it a few years ago. There was 8 aircraft in it. Now there's 42. They've done that without being able to raise funds from the likes of the Heritage Lottery Fund, because when they look at their lease, 6 months rolling lease, they just say we can't lend to you. That, as you rightly say, Chair, there's no reason for that. I don't care what disagreement there is between First and Deputy First Minister. We're used to that, but that should not hold up the rewriting of a lease for something that's so successful and has managed to do what it has done by voluntary action, by raising funds themselves. It just can't go on like this, So I'm with you on the proposed actions. And is the First and Deputy coming before us anytime soon?
They're not scheduled.
Come again?
They're not scheduled. I think
Could we ask them to come?
I would like to hear from the Strategic Investment Board, because, it is part and parcel of their, it's under their remit, and surely they have to have detailed plans on how to unlock this and move it forward. Sorry, Diane, are you signaling to me?
No. I mean, there is an enormous potential in the site. I think that anyone who goes to the Balmoral show will recognise just the vastness of the site and what needs to be done. And Trevor's quite right, the Ulster Aviation Society have done an absolutely sterling job. And I've been down at the museum. But their tenure and their ability to raise funds and their ability to do things that are more permanent are held back by this lack of security around what they're doing. So the There will be political decisions that will have to be taken by the site, but there's no reason why things like the Ulster Aviation Society should be held back in the work that they do, that Balmoral should be held back, and that there are other avenues to pursue. I had at one stage, in the dim and distant past, I'm not terribly sure when, I had heard of a kind of an agri-food centre at the site. Now, I apologise, I wasn't there. Last week I had another full day of stuff scheduled, but that was always part of the plans as well, you know, to boost the agri-food sector in Northern Ireland. So, you know, while there will be political decisions that will be made, but, you know, there are other things that we can get on with doing on the site if we can get the agreement to do so.
Sure, just to follow on, there have been decisions have been allowed even during this impasse between the two departments, and the Balmoral show is a perfect one. They were allowed to develop. The Econ Centre is the same. How on earth that could have been allowed to happen, and the Aviation Society is still stuck with a 6 months lease? It's quite beyond me. I can't help thinking maybe it's just been overlooked. You know, it's not.
Well, there's been lots, things indicated lots of letters have gone to the Executive Office and they haven't had any response. So it's not that it's overlooked, it actually just hasn't been dealt with. Sorry, can I bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight?
Sorry, Chair. I mean, I was just wondering, could we get a list of those options that you outlined at the start for some further discussion? Thanks.
Sorry.
That's all I wanted.
Pat, they're actually in your pack. Page.
Okay.
Well, it's page 14 to 17, but I believe they're on page 16. They're listed there.
No bother. Thanks, Pat.
Yeah. And I suppose I put another one in because I thought that the Strategic Investment Board, if they come in and maybe outlined, because they're, as an organisation, are used to delivering big pieces of infrastructure, and the current format and makeup of the actual board, the Development Corporation, just wouldn't have the capacity and its you know, its existence as it stands today. With a chair and 6 board members and a handful of part-time staff. This site is costing over £1 million per year. And it's really, whilst there has been small bits of development that has taken place, you know, the potential is in the billions, really, for investment. Because if you're talking data centres, if you're talking a centre of logistics, if you're talking, you know, agri-food, that comes with major investment and from the private sector. And also there's going to be an element of housing there and parks and infrastructure around that. So there are great ambitions, but we are locked in political stalemate within the Executive Office. And I just, you know, how do you unlock this? And the prison forms a really important part of the offering within that site. The prison is, you know, I was quite, you know, I was quite, I don't know what's the word, but it is our living history. It's part of who we are. It's a story that we can tell with dignity and respect. And I don't see any reason why, you know, why we can't move on to the development and securing of that prison as well, because it is deteriorating in its you know, in its infrastructure now, and it requires investment just to actually maintain it as it is. It's pretty bleak in there in terms of there's a lot of moss around, and that all costs money for maintenance. But you know, you can't keep on throwing money at a development site that's not been developed. You know, we are, as a committee, responsible for the scrutiny of the work of the Executive Office. Therefore, we've got to call it. As we see, this can't just keep going on. It's been going on now 7 years or 8 years from the letter from America. I keep on thinking of proclaimers and it plays in my head when I say that. But, you know, that's where we're at with this. And really, you know, we're only blowing smoke in the dark by what is actually happening there. This site is 4 times the size of Canary Wharf. It's, you know, twice the size of the Titanic quarter. It is a significant investment real estate site for Northern Ireland. It needs to be looked at. We can't keep on batting the ball away because decisions are hard. We're politicians, we've got to find consensus and solutions and hand it over to the people that can deliver.
Sarah, could I just mention one thing about one of your proposals is to a proposed link road to be, well, that link road would be to the Knockmore link, which is pretty close to being approved, and work could start next couple of years. It wouldn't make sense if that Knockmore link road was developed and then this link road to the link road was developed separately. It should be done in conjunction. The two things would fit. You don't want to build a new road from Knockmore to Sprucefield, which is what's proposed, and then have to break into it to build another road into the maze.
And I think that's where maybe the Strategic Investment Board would do the sequencing of what can and should be happening and how it should be happening in order to unlock the potential of it. So, are members in agreement that we seek a written and oral briefing from the Strategic Investment Board with a dedicated focus on the Maze Long Kesh site? To proceed? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So the second chairman's business is the Flags, Identity, Culture and Tradition report. As members are well aware, it will be published later on this afternoon, although I have not seen it yet, nor I guess have any other members of the committee. At least you will not have read it, I suppose, yet. As someone representing an area where flags are of great concern and constituents regularly frequent my office complaining about them, I'm really disappointed to hear that there is not an agreed action plan and an implementation plan emerging with the publication of this plan. I'm also again concerned about the expenditure, £800,000 spent on this report, 44 recommendations contained therein, and no framework around it, no implementation, as I say, and no actions. Again, you know, it's a failure of politics. It's dysfunctionality at the very least, it's dysfunctionality. So I propose that we invite the joint chairs of the Commission, Dr. Dominic Bryan and Neville Armstrong, to provide a briefing here to the committee in the near future, and that we can add that to our future work programme. Are members happy?
Chair, can I come on there, please?
Yes, you can, certainly, Pat.
Yeah, Chair, and I know you always want to characterise every time there's a blockage to characterise it as dysfunctionality in the relationship between Sinn Féin and the DUP. I mean, the fact is, it was the DUP who blocked publication of this report for a long time, and it's the DUP who is blocking the publishing of an implementation plan. You know, and you can talk all you want about, you know, we just have to get through this blockage. The fact is, there is a blockage and there's one party responsible for it. I think every other party in the executive would be quite happy for an implementation plan to be published along with the report. So I can understand why you want to characterise it in the way you do. I just think it's wrong to do so. Thanks.
Pat, thank you for expressing your views so clearly. However, it's coming out of the Executive Office, and I am criticising the fact that no recommendations or action plans were published with the report, or recommendations published but no action plan. You know, it's in the Executive Office, it's come out of there, and there's a relationship breakdown in that office. We're all very, very, very aware of it. I could cite 6 or 7 other areas where work isn't. I'm astounded, actually, at just the level of dysfunctionality. You know, there is no consensus over anything, and that's from COVID to protocol, to HIA, anything at all. So, I mean, I don't think I'm too wild off the mark to say that there's poor relations in the office or the executive office. It's not a wild guess on my part.
Well, Chair, just could I come back in on that again? I mean, I'd like to know what the positions of the other parties in the executive are, because my understanding is that all the other parties, with the exception of the DUP, would be happy for an action plan to be published and implemented. So, I mean, if one party is constantly holding up progress, it's not right to characterise it just as a relationship problem between Sinn Féin and the DUP. Sinn Féin is quite happy to have an action plan published and implemented. The DUP clearly aren't, and that's not a particular surprise, but that's the facts of it, and we should stick to the facts. Thanks.
Can you bring in Trevor Lunn, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, if you go back to the last time the First and Deputy were here before this committee, the situation was clarified at that time because the First Minister, who's Paul Gimlin still, indicated to our surprise he was perfectly happy to see the report published. He surprised us greatly, but then Michelle O'Neill had to correct him when she got the chance to say, hold on a minute, that's the report and the implementation plan. It was made perfectly clear where the blockage was. And it's public knowledge that all the other parties in the executive are perfectly happy to see this thing published. So Pat's right. I'm not going to try and absolve one side of the executive office from blame on some of these things, but on this one, it's clear cut. It's clear cut. As is the maze problem. We started off this meeting today, nearly 2:30, with 2 examples of intransigence within the most important office in this government. And as you say, you could easily list 6 more.
Can I seek your agreement to actually invite the joint chairs of the Commission to present to the committee at a later date? Yeah?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, draft minutes. The draft minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November 2021 are on pages 6 to 13 of the meeting pack. If members are content that the meetings are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting, then I'll be happy to sign. Members happy? Okay, right. Item number 4, matters rising. Members, Hansard will now record the oral evidence session with the victim and survivor groups in relation to the mother and baby homes, and this will be available in due course. Item number 5, our first departmental oral briefing is on the proposed refugee integration strategy. And just before we bring the officials in, members, I'm really conscious that today we're discussing the refugee integration strategy, and I want, on behalf of the committee, to express our absolute sadness at the death of 27 people who died this day last week on a small boat on their way to the UK in the pursuit of safety and protection. We often give labels to people. We call them refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants, etc. But at the end of the day, they're just people like you and me. And it was a very sad situation that unfolded. So I think that kind of really frames up this piece of work that has been brought by the officials today, and how important it is that we have, the right integration strategy for people that are coming here to Northern Ireland to make this place their home. So having said that, can I refer members to pages 36 to 103 of the meeting pack and pages 2 to 72 of the table pack for the relevant papers. And can I welcome via Starleaf Mr Gareth Johnson, Deputy Secretary, Strategic Policy, Equality and Good Relations, TEO, Ms Orla McStravick, Director, Infrastructure and Racial Equality, TEO, and Debbie Murphy, Head of Racial Equality Unit, TEO. Can I advise you that this session is not being recorded by Hansard. However, a video of the meeting will be available on the committee web page. So can
I come on just on
yes.
that point? Just before we started, I know now a couple of weeks it hasn't been recorded by Hansard. Just for clarity and obviously for the public, I do think that that's very concerning. that so many important issues, mother and baby homes, the issues today, haven't been recorded by Hansard. And I just think in terms of our transparency to the public, that is deeply concerning to me, that none of that has been recorded by Hansard. And I know it is done retrospectively a week or two later, but that's not good enough. So I think that on important issues such as this, we do need Hansard to be here and to be recording it as it happens, just to make sure that when we're inviting people in, that what they say and action points out of that are very clear going forward.
Yeah, okay, and I take on board what you're saying, Pádraig, and it does concern me as well. I do know why it isn't. It's because of the pressure on the legislative pieces that are going through other committees at this particular time, and we are getting some Hansard done retrospectively, but it isn't the ideal situation. We can make note of that again. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, sorry, Gareth, over to you now for your briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm going to invite Orla if she would introduce the strategy for the committee.
No problem, thanks Gareth. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. First of all, I would just like to thank the committee for the opportunity to provide this briefing today on the draft refugee integration strategy. As you're aware, with me today is Gareth Johnson and Debbie Murphy from the Racial Equality Unit. So you will have received the briefing paper and a copy of the draft refugee integration strategy, which formally launched for consultation yesterday. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to cover the strategy development, some of the key outcomes, the priority areas and the actions, and also the consultation approach if members would find that helpful. So by way of background, the development of a separate refugee integration strategy was a recommendation in the Racial Equality Strategy 2015 to 2025. And a draft strategy was developed and updated more recently to recognise the significantly changed landscape in respect of our refugee and asylum seeker population. So the draft strategy itself has been informed by a range of information, learning and best practice. And this has included three key things. So TEO commissioned research on asylum seekers and refugees' experiences of life here, learning and best practice from the resettlement of Syrian refugees through the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme, the VPRS, and also then just sense checking some of that with organisations that work directly to support asylum seekers and refugees. So in terms of the research, this was completed by through Queen's University and engaged a range of stakeholders as well as asylum seekers and refugees directly. And in order to learn from our experience of resettling the Syrian refugees, TEO jointly with DFC colleagues held a strategic insight lab on the long-term integration of all refugees, and that was in March 2020. And it was around a challenge question that framed the two-day workshop. And it was developed in a process involving all NICS departments and was basically, how do we enable refugees and the communities in which they live build a cohesive, sustainable future together? So that was the question that framed the work of that strategic insight lab. It was attended by key stakeholders from across a range of sectors, and it included representatives from the community and voluntary sector, civil servants working in both operational delivery and policy making roles, academics, representatives of local government, statutory partners and user groups, and also observers from other jurisdictions. So the recommendations from the resulting report have directly informed, and many are replicated in the priority areas and actions in the draft strategy. We were mindful that there were obviously a number of organisations for which a fundamental part of their work was leading forums and working extensively and directly with refugees and asylum seekers. So throughout the strategy development and the drafting process, we sought some comment and input from a small number of these as critical friends to help shape the final draft and to make sure that the key issues and barriers facing our asylum and refugee population were reflected in the draft strategy. So in terms of the strategy itself, it has been shared with members, and you'll see that it focuses on 4 outcomes which are set out in the briefing paper submitted. So outcome 1 is around refugees and asylum seekers are valued and respected. And this is to ensure that refugees and asylum seekers are respected as members of our communities and their presence, knowledge and contribution to society is recognised and valued. Outcome 2, refugees and asylum seekers are safe and feel secure. Refugees and asylum seekers feel welcome and live here safely without fear of persecution or discrimination resulting from their immigration status. Outcome 3, refugees and asylum seekers exercise their rights and responsibilities. And this is about refugees and asylum seekers and that they're integrated into diverse and inclusive communities and aware of and able to exercise their rights and responsibilities. And the final outcome, outcome 4, refugees and asylum seekers are supported to achieve their full potential so that they have access to services and support to do that. So 3 priority areas and associated actions have been identified to achieve each outcome, and delivery of these is proposed to be through departmental implementation plans. It is also planned that the Strategic Planning Group on Refugees and Asylum Seekers will fulfil an oversight role, and reports and progress will be presented annually. It is very much a draft strategy, and we're keen to get as wide a range of views as possible to inform the final strategy. So our approach to the consultation rightly has a number of strands. We will, of course, have a number of online events, and 3 of these are planned during this month, January and February, and they will be open to anyone to attend. And a registration process is in place to ensure that those wishing to participate can receive the invite and the link. And we'll, of course, raise awareness through our networks and contact lists, and details have also been published online. We are also going to be engaging directly with smaller groups or individual organisations who wish to meet separately, and will have a specific briefing session with the racial equality subgroup. Critically, we also want to ensure that the lived experience of refugees and asylum seekers informs our final strategy. So Red Cross have been contracted to take forward research and engagement with this group, and that will be a key element of the consultation process. We've also commissioned the Education Authority to engage directly with young people on our behalf through schools, and this will be through focus groups and workshops. They'll be targeted at young people in Key Stage 4 and 5, and at schools with a higher than average proportion of young people from refugee and asylum seeker families. We do, of course, welcome the committee views both today and following this session. We recognise very much that we have an increasing refugee and asylum seeker population. I think we have over 1,800 refugees settled here under the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme, and a significantly increasing number of spontaneous arrivals. We will also be resettling Afghan refugees over the next few years, so finalising this strategy is a key priority for us, and we look forward to one which reflects the consultation responses and best meets the priority needs of refugees and asylum seekers here. So that is just a very brief overview of the strategy content and our consultation proposals, and we're of course happy to take any questions that members may have on the draft strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orla, for that briefing and overview. The publication of the strategy is indeed very, very welcome. And on the face of it, I believe it's a well-written document. However, I do have concerns as to whether it deals with all of the real practical issues that asylum seekers and refugees face when they arrive and settle here. You know, they include things like access to places of worship, access to translation services, the quality and location of the accommodation. And we've heard quite a bit of that in the local media recently, in and around South Belfast, and just some of the housing stock that our refugee community are living in. And how do we go about avoiding harassment and intimidation when the only available accommodation is in maybe a non-welcoming area? How do we change that? And then the other piece that probably concerns me in reflection of it is, you know, how does the Home Office appointed Housing Supply Agency based in GB actually understand the complexities of the housing situation here? So those were just some, you know, really initial thoughts, and I suppose as we go through this consultation process, you know, those will all get probably teased out quite a bit. But on a practical issue, can I ask, you know, why has it taken so long to publish this draft refugee integration strategy?
Yeah. Chair, if I could say something on those points, and I just preface the remarks by saying that at the Strategic Planning Group meeting last week on refugees and asylum seekers, I did, as you have done, and took the opportunity at the start of the meeting just to pause to remember the 27 lives that were lost in the Channel. Now, we in the Executive Office and the devolved administration don't get to decide who gets let in. That's for the Home Office, but I think it does emphasise why the care and support that we give for people who come here is vitally important. The strategy, a strategy can never deal with all issues, and that's why it's important that we do have the Strategic Planning Group, we do have the ongoing mechanisms, and we'll have a series of implementation plans in the different departments who are involved in this, so that the kinds of detailed issues that you're raising can be captured and can be part of the plan. That said, this is a genuine consultation. Orla has set out how we are going to be having online sessions. We're going to be engaging with young people. We've contracted for engagement with refugees and asylum seekers themselves. And if there are things that we have missed, or if there are things that we have got wrong, then we very much want to hear those as part of that consultation, so that we can register them. Just on the specific point about geography, and bearing in mind we're talking about two different groups here: asylum seekers and refugees who have settled status. But with asylum seekers, it is the Home Office that's responsible for accommodation and where people are accommodated. But I had a productive conversation last week with senior officials in the Home Office, and we agreed the need to commission work to look at how more widely across Northern Ireland we could accommodate asylum seekers. It may be a matter of taking some smaller steps first of all, and then some bigger steps. But just given the numbers, we do need to look very seriously at the issue of geography. Maybe I'll ask Orla to come in with anything more, and I know particularly on the issue of what has been happening since the draft of this, or the drafting of this strategy started. There was a draft being worked on in 2016. Of course, the Assembly collapsed. But a couple of months after things returned last year, we had the Innovation Lab with a range of people who are involved in the sector, and we're starting to identify what were the learning points, particularly from the Syrian experience, and the very substantial number of Syrian refugees we've been able to accommodate here. And to factor those into this latest draft. But Orla might have some more comments.
Yeah, I mean, Gareth, you've probably covered the main points there, but I suppose just to flag in terms of the strategy itself, what we're trying to do is deliver those 4 key outcomes. We're not trying to imply that the priority areas and actions in there are absolutely everything that needs done to ensure the successful integration of asylum seekers and refugees. They're the key priorities that we see as an immediate need, but there will obviously be other things that we will need to do collectively to support what is a particularly vulnerable group to integrate within our communities. And it will be a two-way process. So it's not just about the asylum seekers and refugees themselves, it's about the host communities too. And it's a two-way process for integration. And just, I suppose, on as Gareth touched on the time frame for the strategy development, yes, while it had been started, we did feel it would be remiss of us to go ahead with a strategy that had been drafted several years before and that will require executive agreement. So we did take the opportunity with the Strategic Insight Lab from the VPRS to make sure that we could harness any learning and indeed best practice from that and feed that into what is now forming the draft strategy at this point, rather than go out with something that would sort of be out of date by that stage and not recognise the learning that we had over those couple of years.
Okay, and another quick question for me is just how many people seeking asylum are there in Northern Ireland? How many settled refugees, and what data sources do you use to calculate this? And I know just within the context of your document, you state that there is a lack of accurate data on asylum seekers and refugees in Northern Ireland, which makes service design for asylum seekers and refugees more complex. And in your briefing there to us just earlier, Orla, you talked about spontaneous arrivals, and it's my understanding from work that I have been doing in my office that there's quite a significant number of spontaneous arrivals, particularly over COVID. So can you give us any clear indication on that data? Can you give us? Yeah.
Data, historically has been an issue, and what data we will have is the data on those asylum seekers that are here and that have applied to the Home Office to claim asylum. Now, there may be other people here who haven't done that, so therefore we can never be definitive on the quantum. But we have agreed sort of with the Home Office and in conjunction with the NISMP, which are Strategic Migration Partnership, and mayors, who are obviously the contract authority for the Home Office on this, to get data in terms of the numbers, and that data is shared with our strategic planning group on a monthly basis. So just to give an indication in around quantum, there are probably, I haven't got the latest figures for this month, but there will be over 2,000 people in the asylum system at the minute claiming asylum, and our asylum seekers are spontaneous arrivals, so we're not a dispersal area. So anybody that arrives here to claim asylum does so off their own accord. So that's an idea of the quantum. Now, in terms of your refugees, once we do have a very high proportion of those that will actually gain refugee status. I don't have the exact figure, but I think factoring in appeals, etc., we're probably up at around the 90% of those who will get a positive response to their claim for asylum and go on to be refugees. Now, once somebody gets their refugee status, you know, they're not in the system any longer as such. You know, they are like the rest of us, and they're entitled to a lot of the same things as everybody else. So there isn't a means of actually having to, and they can move on and leave and go elsewhere. So there isn't an exact information on the number of people that will stay here as refugees over the longer term. And the other issue with the data as well is obviously you might have people who claim asylum. It may be rejected on the first count and then they go into an appeals process. So that's another application. So our numbers are around applications for asylum rather than specifically individuals. So that just gives you an idea of the quantum. And in terms of the figures, certainly over the last sort of 6 months, we have had a significant increase in the number of spontaneous arrivals. We have estimated on an average of about 40 per month would have been what the norm was back a few years ago. The last couple of months we have ranged from anything from sort of 140 to 213 per month, so it gives you an idea of the extent of increase in the number of arrivals that are arriving here spontaneously.
And have you any data on why they're arriving at such quantities in the last 6 months?
No, I mean they arrive and they present to the Home Office, so we don't have that. We get data in and around, you know, where their maybe home country, their nationality, their home country was, if they're, you know, single families, numbers of their family size, etc. But quite often, you know, asylum seekers can't tell us exactly how they've got here, how they've arrived here, so we don't have the definitive data on that.
Okay, thank you. Can I put John Stewart in the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Chair. Gareth, Orla, thanks so much for your presentation so far. I do agree with much of what Sinead said from the outset in terms of the strategy, and I think we've a lot to do here to change some of the narrow-mindedness of people, which is deeply regrettable, and to do all we can to support the refugee seekers who are arriving here. I suppose I am concerned about the delay in this strategy, but you explained why we're at this point. In terms of formatting it, what have you? Is there any best practice model that you look towards for this, or any examples where you think it's being done well that we can take some of that stuff from, that you have taken ideas from, and also also learned experiences? I know, Gareth, you touched on learning from the Syrian scheme, for example. Just can you touch on that as well in terms of, you know, what went badly, what went well, and how we're going to actually harness that and improve things?
I can say something on those, and then maybe invite Orla in. But I think one of the points that Orla was making is that resettlement is not just about the asylum seekers, the refugees. It's also about the communities in which they're going to be living. Maybe traditionally we have thought about good relations, community relations, as between the two communities here. But of course we are increasingly diverse, and I think it's important to say that TBOC, the executive's strategy for good relations, from an early stage has captured the fact that we are a more diverse community, and there are people of different races, different religions, different backgrounds who are coming here. and you see more and more of an emphasis on that in our good relations work, and we're trying to make sure that race relations is very much integrated into it. I hear what you're saying about the delay. What I would like to think is that in that period, we have nevertheless been living the principles of the strategy, and certainly the success that the Syrian vulnerable persons resettlement scheme has been here. And you know, that says something for the community and just how communities and individuals have welcomed new neighbours. That has, I hope, demonstrated that we've been living some of the principles of the strategy. But in terms of what we learned from the Syrian experience, and that's some of what we've put into the strategy as a result, maybe Orla would want to say something more.
Yeah, Gareth, maybe just to touch on one of your points as well. I mean, one of the main differences, and we did look at other strategies elsewhere, particularly the Scottish one when we were developing this. And I suppose one of the difference elsewhere is our structures here are very different. So in other jurisdictions, you have a local authority that have responsibility for the health and the education. We don't have that. It's across, you know, executive departments. And, you know, Gareth touched on trying to, you know, we're already working in the spirit of the strategy, and one of the main things that we have actually already done is to expand the remit of the strategic planning group that Gareth talked about earlier, to nearly create like a proxy local authority. So that group was originally an oversight structure for the VPRS scheme, and it didn't go beyond that. But we did expand that to cover all refugees and asylum seekers, in the recognition that we need a joined up approach and a proper structure here to oversee the work that we do and to make sure that issues are looked at collectively. So, and that actually was one of the things that came out of the learning from the VPRS, that those structures actually worked well. So just in the spirit of sort of taking the strategy forward, despite the fact that we're only publishing the draft at this stage, we have already done some of those key things that came out of some of the learning from some of the work previously. On the VPRS specifically, I mean, there's been 2 independent reviews done on it, and they were very positive, but they obviously did identify sort of some recommendations and lessons learned. Some of them focus on things like, you know, alternative approaches to English language support, and there are examples of good practice elsewhere that's been explored already. Some pilots around sort of employment and skills developed, and how we could, you know, look to do a bit better in that. And I suppose additional support for local communities where refugees are actually settled. So again, it comes back to that 2-way process to make sure the focus isn't just on the refugee and asylum seeker themselves, but the host community as well, to make sure that there's a dual approach to support the successful integration. So certainly from the Strategic Insight Lab and the 2 reviews that have been done on the VPRS, most of that has been factored into the sort of the key priority areas and actions that are within the strategy, and will be a key part of the implementation plans that will be developed in terms of the very specific actions that will be taken forward by departments. So I hope that gives you just a bit of a flavour.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, Orla. Thanks so much to you, Gareth, for that detailed response. In terms of preparations for the arrival of Afghan refugees under the new resettlement scheme, again, you touched on it slightly. I just want to maybe fan that out a bit in terms of the detail of that. Have you got a time frame in mind and what that resettlement scheme would look like?
Yes, I mean, obviously building on the success of the Syrian scheme, the executive did agree to offer support to resettle Afghan citizens in the wake of the crisis in Afghanistan. And there are effectively 2 schemes, the Afghan Relocation Assistance Policy and the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. Now, TEO have policy responsibility, but we work very closely with our colleagues in DFC who do the operational lead, and also with the wider departments across the strategic planning group. So the First Minister and Deputy First Minister obviously wrote to the Prime Minister to extend the support from our executive to resettle those, and we have agreed to resettle 3% under both of the schemes in line with our population proportion, so it's about 840, probably over a 5-year period. So since that, work has been continuing at pace over the last sort of 12 weeks or so to work with the Home Office to develop a full understanding of the needs of the families in bridging accommodation and to address key issues in relation to lack of data and health concerns. So we've been undertaken to secure suitable housing and health support to meet the needs of those families when they arrive here. So plans are advanced to the stage where we hope to welcome our first cohort before the end of the year. But again, this is very much subject to the available accommodation and the availability of flights. And there is significant work ongoing between departments here and the Home Office in terms of who are the families, what are the family sizes, are there primary school age children, are there health issues, so that we can actually ensure that we can secure the accommodation in the appropriate areas to fully meet their needs. And I suppose that has to be of paramount importance, because we don't want to bring people here and not actually be able to accommodate them and support their needs. So I'm not able to give you a definite date for first arrivals, but we are at a very advanced stage, and it is subject to tying down the family's circumstances and the accommodation then required.
Okay, thanks, Orla. That moves me on to 2 more points. I mean, I think we see press sometimes around the narrow-mindedness of some people, but there are also an incredible amount of people in Northern Ireland who hold like the hand of friendship. And they come to me. I'm not sure if my computer's stalled, has it? Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
They do, and quite often they would come to me whenever they see schemes like the Syrian or Afghan one underway, wanting to know who they can go to offer services, whether they be community organisations or churches or just individuals, to offer, support and things in kind. Is there a sort of gold command or a one-stop shop for this where people can go to offer those services to support people who are arriving?
Anything that has been, and we have ourselves had a number of people who have written into the department, or it's been passed on to us through other MLAs or political representatives, and Department for Communities is leading on that. So we have passed all of that to them, who are overseeing this collectively, and they are then working through all of that as part of their process. So it would be the Department for Communities that would be the lead on that. But certainly, we're happy to take anything and pass it on to our contacts there who are leading. And again, all of this goes through the SPG as well. So we've regular updates on the Afghan work.
No problem. That's where I've been sending them. I suppose it's just some of them. Maybe there's just a gap at the minute or a vacuum waiting for things to happen, but I'll continue to do that then. And the final thing, Chair, if you don't mind, you mentioned about accommodation and having that suitability. And in terms of the spontaneous arrivals, I had a couple of briefings during the summer when there was a bit of negative press around temporary housing for asylum seekers. Is there still an issue, to your understanding, of lack of suitable temporary accommodation for those seeking asylum while they're waiting for the case to be heard? And if so, is that a growing concern, given what you're describing as a growing number of people coming in?
Yeah, I mean, the asylum accommodation, it's provided by mayors through a contract with the Home Office. So the Home Office has responsibility for that rather than the executive. But we do work very closely with our Strategic Migration Partnership and mayors in terms of updates on that and where we are. I give a bit of a flavour of the quantum of arrivals. And yes, they have dramatically increased. And yes, there are pressures in terms of accommodation. Historically, asylum seekers have been accommodated in the wider Belfast area, generally to facilitate close proximity to the Home Office for reporting mechanisms, and also a lot of the legal representation that they need is based there. And as Gareth touched on earlier, this actually was something that was a key part of the discussion at the Strategic Planning Group last week, and mayors gave a presentation on that along with our Strategic Migration Partnership. And what we are sort of looking to do is work with the Home Office to see, do we need to now consider a wider area for accommodation to help address some of those accommodation pressures and meet the needs. So we have developed a work stream basically that the Home Office has agreed we will work through, because it will require some flexibility of approach in terms of around reporting mechanisms, etc. And that is something that the SPG was very supportive of. So yes, it would be remiss of me to say that accommodation isn't an issue. It is, in terms of the number and the quantum that wasn't is unprecedented at this point in time. But there is sort of a work stream through the Strategic Planning Group to look to see how we can sort of support that wider accommodation needs.
Okay. No, I'm glad it's on your radar. Thank you, Gareth, Orla and Debbie, for your time today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, John. Pádraig Delargy.
Yep, thank you for your presentation. I had recently met with quite a few Syrian refugees in Derry, so it was just around some issues that they had when they came to Ireland first. First one, I suppose, to break it in, the 2 distinct points was around physical health, and then I'll move on to mental health. Around physical health was just that they quite often found that there were regional inequalities within the Western Trust. I know the Belfast Trust has done much more of a concerted job in bringing in translators, who are obviously culturally aware and culturally informed, both male and female. Other trusts haven't done that to the same extent. So they found that in access to healthcare, that was a particular issue. So I wonder, is there anything that you're doing firstly to tackle regional inequalities in that mind? And secondly, for mental health, I wonder just about, in terms of including practitioners who are adequately trauma informed, because obviously a lot of asylum seekers and refugees have gone through really traumatic experiences. So I wondered from that perspective what you were doing to support them.
Orla, do you want to come in on this? But certainly, Padraig, some of the points you're mentioning are points that were raised as part of the innovation lab that was done on the Syrian scheme. The support in languages and health and social care needs as well. So they are certainly points that have been recognised. And the point about trauma-informed practice is very well made. It is certainly something that, again, has come up in discussions just recently with stakeholders on this. It's an area where the department and its arm's length bodies has quite a lot of recent experience. We have, for a number of years now, been working on a very trauma-informed approach in relation to victims and survivors of the conflict, of the Troubles. And that has been something that we've been trying to make sure is moved across into the victims payment scheme. So I think there is learning there that we can draw on in informing the way forward on the strategy and the production of implementation plans. But Orla might want to say something just more specifically about how some of the health and social care needs have been addressed under the auspices of the EFC and its responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not aware of the specific issues that you have raised in regarding to health, but it is certainly something that we will look at, because the intention of this strategy is that it will deliver for all refugees and asylum seekers. And if there are specific issues in regards to health support across different trusts, then that's certainly something that we will pick up with colleagues across the board and factor that into consideration of the final strategy, and certainly any implementation plans in particular. I'm just not aware of the specific details of the health issues that you've referred to, and I don't want to give you a false answer, so I'll take that back, I think.
Yeah, I mean, part of the point of having the strategic planning group and broadening its remit has been so that issues that can't be addressed at a lower level can be escalated, and then we can use our interdepartmental contacts to try to address them where we can.
I know there was an issue with some Syrian refugees, probably up in the northwest area at some point in time, around interpreters, and I know that there was more interpreters sought and trained up, so they should be made available across the trust. So certainly, if there is still an issue around that, then we're very happy to look at that and take that back to colleagues.
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, I'm more than willing to meet with you on that. It was around translation services in particular, which meant that when many of those people were coming to Ireland to start with, they had a lot of difficulty in even accessing services and building those connections within their community. There was just one other point I wanted to come to, and it was just around the collection of data. Do you think that should be more of a part of the strategy? I'm thinking around, something similar to ethnic monitoring, to include refugee and asylum seekers within ethnic monitoring. Do you think that's something that you foresee as being a greater part of the strategy?
I mean, the data and the monitoring is something that we have been quite upfront in the strategy that is difficult, and we don't have all of the data. It is helpful that we now have the data sharing agreement with the Home Office to get indications of the number of people arriving here. The difficulty is, how do we monitor the success of the integration? And we have flagged in the strategy that we will probably need to do additional research around that. There is also the Home Office indicators of integration as well, which you can break down into NI specific. But I think the key things will be the gaps in that and what those gaps are. And then any further research or data that we want to take forward will need to be a key part of that. In terms of how that sits with the ethnic equality monitoring, ethnic equality monitoring is obviously something that the department has taken forward as a key priority separately under a commitment in the racial equality strategy, and we have prepared draft guidance around that and shared with departments with a view to that being finalised, and we have set up a cross-departmental group to look at that and to try and progress ethnic equality monitoring as a key priority, working collectively with the subgroup. So certainly that is a separate work stream that is being taken forward, but we will be part and parcel of that, and therefore the needs and issues around refugees and asylum seekers, we will feed into that process and what comes out the other side in terms of our actual approach and our plan to implement ethnic equality monitoring here.
Well, that's brilliant. That's definitely answered my question, and I'm glad to hear it. So I will be in contact just around those translation services, and we can work together on that.
That's no problem. If you want to send us the details of that, we are very happy to pick that up separately, and we can liaise with colleagues as well. Debbie, I don't know if there's anything you want to specifically say in addition to any of that? No? Okay.
No, that's brilliant. That's my questions answered anyway. Thank you.
Okay, can I bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Sinead. The first question I want to ask is in relation to the pathway out of destitution that's mentioned for asylum seekers and refugees, and especially those who have no recourse to public funds. And could we have a wee bit more detail on that? If refugees and asylum seekers don't have any recourse to public funds, and we have no power here over asylum applications, what can we do? Is there anything at all we can do to help them?
Debbie, do you maybe want to come in on this? Because I know that is an area of work that you have been involved with some of the stakeholders around starting to plan for potential implementation of that specific area of work. Is Debbie still there?
She's here. She's on the...
No, can't hear. Sorry, Debbie must be having technical problems there. Yes, look, there is work ongoing. I don't have the full detail of it. Debbie would have been able to cover that in more detail, but there is work that's ongoing with stakeholders around how we can start to look at a pathway out of destitution. The asylum seekers don't have any recourse to public funds, and if somebody is significantly at risk of destitution, there are some mechanisms that we do have at the minute. For example, our crisis fund. So our crisis fund is a fund that TEO operates. It's delivered currently by Red Cross, and it basically is to build a bridge from destitution. And we increased, I think it started off at about 500k. It went up to, it started off very small and went up to 100k, and we've now increased that to 200,000 over the last year. And that is, it does in most cases support asylum seekers and refugees who are at risk of destitution, and we can provide some support to bridge that around that. But there is a separate strand of work ongoing in addition to that with some of our stakeholders around a wider pathway out of destitution. But as I say, apologies, Debbie would have been able to give you more information on that, but we're very happy to follow up on that. But the bottom line is it will be a key action point in the strategy and something that will be part of our implementation plan as we move into the implementation stages.
Okay, thanks for that, Orla. And just in terms of refugees or asylum seekers accessing that crisis fund, how is that done?
The Crisis Fund is delivered by Red Cross, who works with a number of partner organisations to distribute money. Now, the intention isn't that it would be, somebody needs a one-off payment. It's to bridge destitution and to provide a package that would stop them just being in the same position time and time again. So the organisations that Red Cross would work with are those that can basically provide wraparound support so that they get somebody back on their feet, and then provide additional support and services to them that would stop them falling into that position again. So it's not an application process where you would apply in and ask for money for oil or something like that. It is about wraparound support to stop people falling into that constant cycle of destitution, and it is administered by Red Cross and its partner organisations. And generally those partner organisations are already aware of, through their own work in this area, those that are specifically at risk and already providing some form of assistance, and this is additional to try and prevent that to bridge that destitution risk.
Okay, thanks for that. I just want to move on to a couple of other areas in terms of maybe areas that should have a particular focus in the report. And first of all, it's welcome to see that there's an intersectional focus on the most vulnerable and recognising the most vulnerable refugees, women, LGBT plus children, and people with disabilities. Do you not think it would be a good idea to have a sort of a focused section on those most vulnerable refugees? And I'll just go on to the other question. Is there a case for including a section on tackling paramilitarism, given the fact that paramilitaries here have been involved in hate crimes? Thanks.
So just in response to that, I mean, the strategy is intended to deliver for all refugees and asylum seekers, but certainly your point around, those most vulnerable is something that, may come up as part of the consultation as well, and we'll certainly factor that in. Gareth, I don't know if you want to touch on anything on the tackling paramilitarism. And as it happens, just yesterday I had a discussion with my opposite number in the Department of Justice. I sit on the Tackling Paramilitarism Programme Board, and we were looking at what were the broader links that could be made between her work and the work here in TEO. So certainly, Pat, I'll be bringing the response to this strategy through to the Tackling Paramilitarism programme, and seeing if there's any additional action, focused action that needs to be taken.
Okay, thanks for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Can I bring in Diane Dodds, please?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I'm presuming the mic is on. Yeah. So thank you, Chair. Gareth and Orla, just a very quick question, because I'd really wanted to ask some questions about the Afghan refugee scheme, but that has already been covered. How long can someone wait? What's the average length of time that someone will wait while getting an asylum application processed?
The application timeframes can vary, but in reality, people can be waiting years before they get an outcome, and it would depend if they go through if they maybe have a negative outcome to start with and then have to go through an appeals process. I don't have an actual average for you, but it generally can take several years for something to come to conclusion through a process.
One of the concerns that we have there is that the Home Office at the minute would be clearing maybe about 50 cases a month, and that was okay when there were 40 people arriving each month. But now that the numbers, as Orla has said, 1 month 170, another 213, there is a concern that the mechanisms aren't all keeping up, and that has been part of the discussion that we've been having with the Home Office.
Could I maybe come in there? I'm not sure if my microphone's now working again, is it?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just off of the back of what Gareth was saying there, that is definitely part of the pressure around the housing. And one of the issues is that what would normally happen is when an application is resolved, their person would move into what's referred to as either positive or negative cessation, which means positive would be that they receive their status and negative would be that they cease to receive support. Because of the impact of the pandemic, those cessations, the negative cessations were paused. So not only do we have an increase in the number of arrivals and people staying a long time because of the fact that the application process takes so long, but also there is a lower turnover of people coming out of the accommodation. So there are more people staying on longer in the accommodation than there potentially would have been before, which has led to an increase in the pressure on the housing as well.
Okay, and do we get support? How do we support folk during that period?
In terms of during their asylum claim?
Yes.
Well, as I say, their accommodation is provided under the Home Office have basically 2 contracts which they have in place to provide that support. So because they're asylum seekers, it's not like a refugee where it would fall to the likes of the Housing Executive to provide accommodation. It's the Home Office responsibility. So during the asylum claim, they provide the accommodation and the additional areas of support rather than us. But I suppose what we would try and do is work closely with mayors and the Strategic Migration Partnership and the other contract holder around, you know, what the issues are, what the risks are, and then the SPG would look to see if there's anything that we can do in respect of that. But it's just asylum seekers are different than refugees in that they haven't been granted their legal status, and as such, it is a Home Office responsibility at that point.
Though the wider support needs for asylum seekers, like healthcare support, getting linked up with a GP, education, obviously, which is a very big thing, and how you deal with the language needs around education. Those are very much the issues that through the strategic partnership we've been dealing with.
Yeah, and the likes of the Housing Executive and PSNI and that would sort of engage with the contract providers as well to sort of, you know, provide any input in terms of what their proposals are or anything they might need to be aware of to try and make the best outcome as possible for those asylum seekers that have arrived here. But the SPG would be the overarching sort of structure for key issues.
Can I ask one short question just before we finish off here? Just can you explain the rationale behind the tender to repeat the lived experience research that was commissioned in 2016 and published in 2017?
What was that, sorry?
Sorry, can you explain the rationale for the tender to repeat the lived experience research that was commissioned in 2016 and published in 2017?
That was taken forward specifically to inform the development of the refugee integration strategy. So at the time that it was a commitment in the racial equality strategy, it was commissioned that we wanted to get sort of the lived experience and research of people's experiences here to help inform the drafting of the strategy. So that was commissioned, as you said, in 2016 when we were initially starting to look at developing it. And it was published in 2000, and I think it was December 2017 was the final report. And then the sort of key outcomes from that have been part of the considerations for the development of this strategy. So the focus of that was to assist with the development of the refugee integration strategy.
But have you not commissioned another tender to repeat that piece of work?
That the tender at the minute is to inform the consultation on this draft strategy. So that will be around, you know, that was 2016, 2017. We're now in sort of 2021 and we have a draft strategy developed. So we wanted to get input directly from refugees and asylum seekers to help inform the final strategy as a key part of the consultation. And we felt that was important, both given the passage of time and also given that we now have a draft strategy which can help focus some of that engagement and research to then inform the final strategy.
Okay, and just another quick question as well, but I think from their signs that there's an increasing number of asylum seekers coming from the Horn of Africa. What kind of support has been put in place to help them?
Let me just get, so we do get data from our NISMP and through our mayors group around sort of the arrivals here, where they're originally from. Debbie, I don't know whether you want to pick up anything on anything specific, but you know, they are very mindful of where people are arriving from, things like, you know, interpretation needs, health needs, etc., that are all part and parcel of the contract with the Home Office in terms of identifying what those needs would specifically be.
We do get data, as Orla says, from the Home Office and via their regional delivery group, which is the group that's set up to support the delivery of the contract. And on that group, we would have engagement. It's headed up by the Northern Ireland Strategic Migration Partnership, who have the responsibility for the oversight of the contract here with mayors, which is the accommodation contract, and also the advice and issue reporting and eligibility contract, which is done by Migrant Help under Bryson here. So those groups all sit on this regional delivery group, and we take part in that as well. Through that, we would be aware of where there are potentially new languages or languages where we haven't got a lot of interpreting services and things available. We engage with the health trusts and housing provider and a wide range of services there where we would find that it's been reported that users are having difficulty accessing things, potentially if they are coming from a newer area where we haven't got the experience there. But Red Cross in particular are kind of key in spearheading the orientation process when people come. They get some funding from the department as well to do that, and they would kind of flag issues to us where people are experiencing specific issues if it is in relation to language or something particular to their coming from a new area that we haven't experienced of before. I'm not aware of particular issues having been raised in relation to people arriving from the Horn of Africa, although I am aware that Hapani have provided translation services on occasion. They've been called in by the Health Trust to do that. But no, I'm not aware of particular issues having been raised.
It was around translation services really that the issues were raised with me as well. And in fact, we've got a piece of correspondence in our packets from someone in relation to support for some language training as well. So, look, that has been really informative. Sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
No, I was just going to say I'm aware that there are some minority languages that would be in relation to that geographical area, and because, for example, things like the big word, they would have translation services, say, for potentially the top 10 languages that we have here, but there may be some that have come in over the last sort of 6 months to a year that wouldn't have initially been available, but we would work to try and identify where we can get translators for that, or identify an alternative to whatever the standard translation service is. But certainly if people flag those to us, and in particular where they're having difficulty, if it is something with engaging with the Health Trust or a particular provider, we can look into that for them.
Thank you very much. And can I thank all of the panel for briefness and officials today for briefness. So thank you, Gareth, Orla and Debbie. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. I suppose really a follow-up from that will probably happen next week, because we will hear directly from the refugee and asylum seeker stakeholder groups, and I think they'll provide us with more information and allow us to dig deeper into the consultative document and maybe give more support to officials in areas that we think that could have a more robust output. So if our members are happy just to move on through the agenda. Okay, thank you. Item number 6, it is an oral briefing this afternoon from the Public Service Ombudsman, and can I refer members to pages 104 to 117 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers. And can I welcome to the meeting this afternoon Miss Margaret Kelly, Public Service Ombudsman, NIPSO, and Mr Sean Martin, Acting Deputy Ombudsman, NIPSO as well, and Miss Joanne Matthews, Complaint Standard Manager from NIPSO. This session is not being recorded by Hansard, but there will be a video of the meeting and it will be available through the committee webpage. So can I invite Margaret to make an opening brief?
Oh, good afternoon. I'm just checking that you can hear me okay.
Yes, Margaret, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to committee for finding the time in the schedule to include this item to allow us to move forward. So the legislation which provides the statutory authority for my office came into effect in 2016, and included in that legislation was Part 3 of the Act, which was the power to undertake a complaint standards role in relation to all public bodies. The purpose of this role was to make it easier for people to complain by simplifying the complaints process across public bodies, and also enabled complaints to be dealt with in a timely way and with a focus on early intervention. And thanks to some earlier work both by the Assembly Commission and by this committee, Part 3 of the legislation was commenced on the 20th of May 2021. In line with the legislative requirements, NIPSO launched a public consultation on the 10th of June, seeking views on a number of the key elements of this complaint standards model. And that included the Statement of Principles, a model complaints handling procedure, and our proposed approach to implementation. The consultation closed on the 30th of September. We received really a very positive and I think significant response. We got 101 completed responses to the consultation, and these are broken down as follows. There were 47 members of the public who responded, 48 public bodies, 5 advocacy and support groups, and 1 political party. As I'm sure committee is aware, in order for us to progress the implementation of the complaint standards role, NIPSO is required to publish our Statement of Principles. But before doing so, we must lay them before the Assembly and have them approved by a resolution. So I'm presenting both this information and the associated paper as the formal analysis to committee of our consultation responses, and asking committee to consider, if it is content with the draft Statement of Principles, to move a resolution for their approval. The draft sets out 6 overarching principles for complaints handling by public bodies, and in proposing these 6 principles, we took account of similar principles in other jurisdictions and of using language which was easily understood and accessible to the public. So the principles are: start off right, and we do give the committee some detail under each of these, but basically we mean have effective leadership and culture around complaints and ensure staff are equipped and trained. Fix it early, so acknowledge mistakes and have a prompt remedy if that's possible. Focus on what matters, so really listen to complainants and respect them and try to accommodate their needs. Be fair in your investigations, so keep them to timescale and consistency. Be honest, be open and accountable with people who are complaining, and keep full records. And finally, learn and improve. So regularly review your complaints handling, publish the outcomes of complaints, and record and analyse complaints to give a sense of trends. Of the 101 responses that we had, 67 had nothing further to add or change in relation to the principles. As you will see from the paper, a number of issues were raised, which we did take into account, and in some of them we did amend the Statement of Principles accordingly. There was an issue raised in relation to whether or not the Statement of Principles were fit for an education setting. This was not a view that was raised by either the Department of Education or the Education Authority, and we did look at this, but similar principles are applied in an education setting in other jurisdictions. And education is still a fairly new area for NIPSO. It came in 2017, but since that time we have seen that grow as a percentage of our complaints. And we do feel that while there may be work to do around training and support, that the principles as they stand are suitable for an education setting. There was also some suggestions about should NIPSO include a list of the person complaining's responsibility, but in fact our role is very much in relation to the public body and how they handle complaints, and we consider that it is for the public bodies to actually set out for people what they expect from them when complaining, and we are doing some work with public bodies to begin to address that very, very small number of complainants who may prove more difficult for public bodies to actually engage with. So we did undertake a really significant level of engagement when we were developing these principles with public bodies and with a range of advocacy and support groups. But over 2/3 of the people who responded had nothing to add to the Statement of Principles. And if we analyse the responses, 95% of those who responded had nothing to suggest other than some fairly minor amendments. So I am content that this does represent fairly overwhelming support for the statement of principles as we have presented them to committee. I am, of course, very happy to answer questions on it, but I would ask that committee considers the draft statement of principles, and if you are content, that you will consider moving the motion so that they may be laid before the floor of the Assembly and seek approval by resolution to allow us to move forward with implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for your briefing. And you indicated that you received responses from 2 ministers. Did the other ministers not respond, or did you not directly engage with them?
So I'm going to answer, and then I'm maybe going to ask Joanne to come in because she is more over the detail. So we did get responses from 2 ministers, and we engaged with all of the public bodies, and I think Joanne could give you some detail in terms of government departments. I think those 2 ministers just had a particular interest. One was the health minister, and 33% of the complaints that we get in NIPSO relate to health and social care. So I think a fairly understandable level of engagement there. And the other was from the Justice Minister. Joanne, I'm not sure if you had anything you'd like to add on that.
Yeah, we didn't actually go and seek any responses from any particular ministers, and I think Margaret's right. These particular ministers had an interest, I think, in our consultation. We did have responses from 5 different government departments, and therefore we seen those responses as what those departments would say, and in particular probably their ministers. So we were very much pleased with the responses that we got from the government departments.
Okay, and I suppose it's logical that quite a lot of complaints in that would come in via health. I know they do in my office anyway, quite frequently. Do you anticipate any opposition to the principles when they're brought into the floor of the Assembly?
So I know that's always difficult to anticipate, but we haven't had any indication of opposition, and in fact certainly most of the MLAs who would be very familiar with complaints through constituency offices, and who would also then be familiar if they go right through and come through to my office, have been supportive around the need to make it easier and more straightforward to complain. Since I took up post at the end of August last year, I have actually met, I think now, with almost all of the political parties. I've gone out and offered meetings with all of them, and that's been quite interesting for me, because I think sometimes even among the parties, there's not always an awareness of how to move the complaints through the system. And many of the parties have said to me, you know, sometimes it's hard to know when something is a complaint and the kind of response we get. So I'm not expecting there to be any significant opposition. And I think the principles are pretty broad and are probably what we would all expect should we have the need to complain.
I like them because they're simple. You know, they're simple, they're easy to remember and understand, and that's always a good sign of proposals and principles coming forward. Can I bring John Stewart into the spotlight?
Thank you, Chair. Folks, can you hear me okay? Good stuff. Yeah, I agree with Sinead, again, twice in one day, Sinead. I think they are broad enough, but also all-encompassing and simple to understand for the public, particularly who'll be making the complaint. And I think that's what's most important. And I can't see why anybody on the floor of the Assembly would have any reason to be opposed to them. And I certainly don't at this stage. I suppose whenever I get constituents coming to me who are looking to make complaints against public bodies, they find the biggest complaint I get is that they find it as difficult as it is to cancel a TV subscription, which can be virtually impossible at times, you know, in terms of trying to worm your way to where to go to and then find out how it's done once you get there and then stick to the process, which can be quite burdensome. I'm just wondering, you know, as my question for today, was that the theme of the feedback you got from the public? Was that their biggest issue? Maybe not that they didn't get the outcome they wanted, but when just couldn't get to the point where they could get the outcome?
So maybe if I just say a little bit and then I'll ask Joanne to come in, that I think that is a theme that I have heard consistently since I took up my role as Ombudsman, that people actually find it very difficult to complain. And the purpose of the complaint standards is so that the complaint system will look the same regardless of which public body you are actually complaining to, and that there will only be 2 stages. And then it will be clear when that stage is complete how that if you remain dissatisfied, you may bring that through to my office. And just to illustrate that, John, and then I'll ask Joanne to come in, and we recently dealt with a complaint on an education issue, and we published a summary of it earlier this year, and that person had actually been to 54 separate organisations to attempt to have her complaint, which was a fairly serious complaint, dealt with before she found her way to us. And I always say that's an issue for us as well. So we've been doing a lot of engagement and we have a focus on engagement, but it's certainly an issue that demonstrates we need to make it simpler for someone who needs to complain. Joanne, I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think what we did find from the consultation was out of the number of people who had minor comment to make, 73% of those of the public actually were reinforcing many of the principles that are before you today in terms of being fair and how they actually really appreciate that and they want that. There was a lot of responses in terms of standardising the process and making it simpler, which is what NIPSO's complaint standards is really all about. Also, there was more about responses about the timeframes. It was taking far too long for complaints to come through, and that leads very much, as we all know, to complainant fatigue in terms of, and also for the complaint handlers who are dealing with the complaints in the public bodies. So in terms of the responses we got, it was very much reinforcing the principles, the statement of principles today, and being transparent in those processes, being clear and making the process straightforward for everyone involved in the complaints process. So it was very encouraging to see those responses because we do feel that complaints are a very powerful vehicle for learning and service improvement, service design and delivery.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think continuity is the key to all this, across all the different public bodies, to make sure that there is a simple process where people can lodge a complaint, and that's what you're doing. And I appreciate you do both the work you're doing in this. Another issue I get is the difficulty people have accessing information, the delays in that, and also the bodies not hitting the required time frame for FOIs. Is that something that was raised as well in terms of responses, or an issue that you've been looking at?
Well, some of the sorry, Margaret.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, another major response that we did get was around the timeframes, and basically those responses were really in regards to the model complaints handling procedure and not particularly the statement of complaints. The difference between the two is the statement of principles is really the cornerstone and foundation for what a model complaints handling procedure should look like for public bodies. And I think there was a frustration, I suppose, coming through there because, people wanted to really relay how they were feeling about the amount of delays that they had and access to information quickly and, resolving their complaints quickly. And I think that's where we got those responses in terms of the model complaints handling procedure, which was another document we consulted on and not particularly on the statement of principles itself.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Hopefully I'll not end up with egg in my face because I haven't actually consulted my party in this, but I can't see any reason why anybody wouldn't be wanting to sign up to the 6 statement of principles that are there, given how broad and all-encompassing that they are. And can I just thank you all for the ongoing work that you're doing and the support for the public that in the work that you're doing, and hand it back to the Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And can I bring in Trevor Lynn, please?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair, and thank you both for your presentation. I don't have to consult a party because I don't have one, so I can safely say that I'm completely in favour of these principles. Just a couple of questions. Presumably there was a protocol for dealing with complaints in principle, similar document to this under previous ombudsmen. In what way does this differ from what was in place before? I presume it's an improvement, but what were the problems with the old system?
So as it currently stands, public bodies can design their own complaint system. And some of what has prompted not just us as the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman, but ombudsmen in other jurisdictions to work on this issue of a standardised complaint system is the absolute disparity. So you could have a public body that has 2 stages, you might have some with 5 stages, you might have some with 3, and that process could take 20 weeks, it could take 2 years. I mean, sometimes we have people who come to the office, who bring their complaint to the office, who might have been stuck in an ongoing complaint system for a number of years. And so while there would be broad principles around good practice in handling complaints, and we would use that as part of how we measure how a public body has actually dealt with a complaint, this will create a standardisation and a simplicity for people, and we hope that it will deal with some of those issues about those really long timescales and stop people getting caught in a cycle where they're actually dealing with a complaints process that's a number of years. So a good example of that is sometimes if someone complains to a care home and are dissatisfied, and then they complain to the trust, and then they might complain to RQIA, and so they might be in a process that goes on for 2 or 3 years, whereas in fact this will allow them to deal with their complaint with the care home, and then if they remain dissatisfied, to bring it to my office. Joanne, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add on that.
Yeah, you're completely right, Margaret. That's what complaint standards, what we're trying to do here is standardise the process across all public bodies for everyone involved, for the public and the public complaint handlers. What we want to do is have all public sectors that when a member of the public goes to complain, that broadly speaking, the complaints process that they use will be the same regardless of what sector that they're complaining to. So it makes it easier for probably a constituent coming to you to talk about any complaints process that you know that broadly speaking the complaints procedure will look the same in regardless of whatever sector you're utilising or the service you're utilising. And I suppose behind complaint standards is really a real culture change is what we're looking for. We want senior leadership to really value the complaints standards that we're trying to promote here, and to really value those so that their staff are empowered and enabled to handle complaints, but also that the complaints procedures, regardless of sector, is accessible to every member of the public.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks very much for that. Last question, I'm just curious about this. Who investigates or who's responsible to deal with complaints against your organisation?
So it is a question we do get asked, and we do have a standard service. So if you want to, if you've brought your complaint to me and you're unhappy, you can complain about the service. And I am just going out to put in place a separate independent person who can look at that. So we will review it, and then someone separate and independent. Which is something that has just recently happened across some of the other Ombudsman's office. If, however, you are unhappy with the decision and feel there has been something wrong with our process, then that is a matter for judicial review. And that is, again, standard across Ombudsman's offices in all of the jurisdictions, that is the process.
It sounds like a sledgehammer to crack a nut, really, doesn't it, to involve judicial review?
I know. We don't, we do try to obviously display best practice, and we really do try to work with people. And I'm not going to jinx myself by saying we don't have many.
Well, the ones I've had experience of haven't involved complaints against you, believe me, or your predecessors. I think you do a terrific job. So thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Can I bring in Diane Dodds, please?
Just very, very briefly, I have no issues at all with the general principles. And just because we are talking about a complaints procedure, I've just been rereading a complaint that was sent to me in the last day. And over the last period of time, what we've seen are people who have complaints around healthcare, for example. Whether that's around the kind of issues that Muckamore would have thrown up, or issues around how elderly patients are treated in homes with outbreaks of COVID, for example, within the home, or indeed even patients who are in, and this is a very topical issue at the moment, who are in care homes who seem to have no rights to have visits from their family and friends. I mean, I've had a number of issues recently where constituents have complained that care homes are simply cut down and allowed, and I don't understand the phrase window visits. So in other words, you can go and look at your family through a window. And some folk in the last 6 months have not had their family hug them, touch them, or any one other thing. So I think the issue of standardising complaint and making the process open and available to folk is probably more important than ever it has been, where people feel that some of their fundamental rights to, for example, see their loved ones have been denied them. So I'm really looking for a straightforward process that people feel that no matter where that complaint is directed to, that it will be dealt with efficiently and honestly, I think is the word. Because so many people don't have faith in the complaints processes that we've had so far. And maybe that's more a comment than it is a question, but it's a reflection of the issues that have come to my desk and my constituency office over the last number of weeks.
Absolutely, and one of the reasons that I am keen to get committee support and to get this through is that I need the statement of principles approved before I can begin that process of putting in place a two-stage, really clear complaints process with all public bodies. And we did meet specifically with some of the advocacy groups around care homes, and there is real confusion for people about how to complain in care homes, when that complaint is complete, and when they can possibly bring that to my office. And there is work for us to do as well, I would say, in terms of engaging with people, making them really clear about what the Ombudsman's office can do and can't do, and giving them a route where, when they are very unhappy with the outcome, that they can come through to me. So I would agree with what you've said, and I think this is a journey. It's not, we are not going to change this overnight. My colleagues in Scotland have told me it took a good 5 years once they really got this work in place to begin to see that culture change coming through. But if we don't begin that, we certainly won't see that change. But I would absolutely agree with you.
I think that we need to give people faith that the system isn't stacked against them, and that if they complain, that they will be taken seriously. And that has come more and more to my attention over the last number of months, and so I wish you well in that journey, and I hope that it is not a 5-year journey, that it is a journey that we can set in place, because I do think that we need to assure people that their voice will be heard in sometimes difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And can I bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Margaret and Joanne. In a sense, my question follows on from what Diane was asking about. And first of all, I suppose it doesn't surprise me that 33% of all complaints you receive are about the health system. And as you know, Margaret, I was heavily involved for the last number of years with patients who had been involved some way in the hyponatremia scandal, the Muckamore scandal, the neurology scandal, and some of the care home scandals. And there were a couple of common themes that ran through all of those. First of all, that people didn't have a clear signpost as to how they should go about making a complaint, who they should complain to. Many people, first of all, went to the RQIA. The RQIA told them they don't deal with individual complaints, and they were pushed on somewhere else. So they're being pushed from pillar to post. But one of the most upsetting things for people who have made complaints in all of those scandals I have been speaking about is that they don't believe that there's going to be accountability. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the 6 principles that you have laid out here today, where does accountability fit into all of that? Because when people make a complaint, and especially when it's one that is very serious and has either affected their own lives in a very negative way or the lives of some of their family members or loved ones, they want accountability. And how do you bring that, or can you bring that in any way into the process? Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. And I know that you've worked on some of those really significant issues and really serious issues of complaint. For me, in some respects, accountability flows through each one of those 6 principles. And it does start with effective leadership, and it does start with that culture change, and that is us saying to organisations, you need to start that off right at the beginning. You need to actually make complaints important, and I do think it's a real process of culture change. I suppose in some respects, and I'm going to ask Joanne just to talk a wee bit more about the accountability through those principles. If people are unhappy with that complaints process, and if they feel that that complaints process hasn't properly considered the complaint, then they should only have to do 2 stages. That should be time limited, and then they can bring it to my office for that independent investigation. I am not going to say that that will always change everything, because it won't, but it's like the parent who went round 54 separate organisations before she finally found her way to NIPSO, and we did a very in-depth investigation on that issue, and we did both get that public body to engage and make some changes on that. I mean, you're not going to do those overnight, and I think there are challenges for all of us to think about. How do complaints feed in so you get a bit of an early warning system? And you and I have talked a little bit about this before. It is something that I have 6 more years in my role that I really want to work on. How do you get that culture change in public bodies so they don't just hear each individual complaint, but they start to look at the trend and start to think about, actually, is there an issue there? And that does require a culture and an openness for public bodies, and I am hoping that we begin to make some of those changes, but I do think that's a journey, and I don't think that's something I'm going to achieve overnight, but it is something that in my next 6 years in my role, I very much have in my sights as something that I would want to see shift. Joanne, I'm not sure if there's anything on the principles around accountability that you might want to say.
Yeah, Pat, you're right. Accountability is really important to us, and it is one thing that we did want to flow through each and every one of those. Start off right is where accountability comes in there is really through effective leadership, and that leadership gives endorsements to good complaints handling and also the value of complaints and how they can learn from them. But to start off, you need that leadership to do that, I suppose, and to create that culture that embraces complaints and learns from them. Fixing it early, believe it, I think we all know an apology very quickly is very effective, and I think that's there's accountability in there, that if a public body is going to apologise, they're being accountable for what the actions they took. In terms of focus on what matters, I think putting the complainant at the heart of the process is accountability in terms of listening, respecting, and doing everything you can to ensure the complainant gets the accountability from the public body. In terms of being fair, I think the accountability there comes from ensuring that there's fair investigations in accordance with law and guidance, and that's where there's the accountability. I think also in being honest, it clearly states be open and accountable, and that's where our accountability really, you know, we've actually came out and clearly stated there is accountability for public bodies. But I think really important in all of this statement of principles is the learn and improve principle, in terms of actually being accountable in publishing your complaints, recording and publishing your complaints and how you've dealt with your complaints, the outcomes and the remedies. And I think that provides accountability for the public at large.
I maybe just add a couple of points around, they're not specific to the principles, but in terms of the role of the Ombudsman and the fact that we do publish the majority of our decisions. So, and when we publish those decisions, certainly where they're a larger public body, we will make that known to people in terms of what that body was and the recommendations we have made. But I think while, you know, there is a statement of principles themselves, and I think Joanne's right, you know, that be honest principle, be open and accountable for things when they have gone wrong, acknowledge those and seek to put them right. But there is then the accountability that comes from the Office of the Ombudsman and the role we perform in independently investigating and then publishing the outcome of the work that we do.
Okay, thanks for that. And I mean, I don't disagree with what you have all said, especially in terms of culture change within the public organisations, and particularly within our health trusts. And my fear always has been that there's a power imbalance between the trusts, for example, and the organisations which have the responsibility for holding them to account, whether it's NIPSO or the RQIA or whoever. And, you know, having dealt with a large number of patients who have had very serious complaints, sometimes as far as, you know, trusts being responsible for causing the deaths of loved ones or for ill treatment of loved ones and so on, that the organisations tasked to hold a trust to account don't really have the power to do it, or they are reluctant to do it. There's a sense that, you know, this trust is too powerful, we're never going to be able to hold them to account. They're going to circle the wagons and protect whoever is responsible for causing harm to a patient or not carrying out properly their management or supervisory roles in some of these scandals. So there's not really a question in there, it's more a comment than anything. So thanks very much. That's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions there, and thank you to Margaret and Sean and Joanne. And I really do appreciate your work, and the simpler the system is and the more accessible it is and the more outreaching it is to citizens. And we have to encourage people to actually complain if the service that they get is not right, or it's not good service. You know, it's in our interests that people do complain, so we must make it accessible, and I think that's precisely what your office is doing, Margaret, and I congratulate you on that work. So I will seek the assurances and agreement from the members here of the committee to bring these principles forward. So thank you very much for your briefing this afternoon, and no doubt we will be in touch.
Thank you very much, and thank you to committee.
Okay, members, if you are content for the committee to bring forward a motion to the Assembly for a resolution to adopt the Statement of Principles, we will be happy to proceed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, happy, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're a bit ahead of ourselves in time, so if I could seek your agreement to move forward to other items on the agenda. So if I could move forward to the forward work programme at item 8 in our agenda, if members are happy. Okay, so can I refer members to pages 152 to 158 of the meeting pack? And it's the forward work programme for December right through to January. Members, departmental officials will be attending the committee on the 26th of January to provide an oral briefing on the violence against women and girls strategy, and I think that that's an appropriate timing for us to hear from officials just on how advanced they are in developing that work. So can I seek your agreement to invite stakeholders to attend that day to give their views also on that strategy? Okay. Members, the clerk will provide us with a list of proposed invitees at next week's meeting, if members are okay, to make any suggestions to the clerk to take forward, and perhaps then he can contact the stakeholders and the organisations on our behalf. Members content to note the remainder of the forward work programme?
Yep.
Okay. In correspondence, members, there are 16 items of correspondence from pages 159 to 189 in the meeting pack, pages 86 to 90 in the table pack. Item number 9.1 is the Secretary of State response on the rejection of planned legacy proposals. 9.2 is the Public Administration and Consultational Affairs Committee, and it's really just a thank you note to the Chair, and the same in 9.3 to a note to the Deputy Chair. 9.4 is First Minister and Deputy First Minister response in relation to the Commissioner for Victims and Survivors post and departmental champions. 9.5 of correspondence is from the First Minister and Deputy First Minister regarding travel agents' coronavirus financial assistance scheme, and can I remind members the committee wrote to the Economy Committee to raise this issue directly with the Economy Minister, and I had a brief word with the Chair of the Economy Committee as well in relation to that. So on point 9.6, First Minister and Deputy First Minister response in relation to the appointment of Commissioner for Public Appointments, and that appears to be ongoing. 9.7, the Executive Office news release on COVID-19. 9.8 in correspondence is the Executive Office COVID recovery team, the equality screening. I was a wee bit confused at that, because it seemed to be equality screening taking place after the publication of the COVID recovery programme. I just thought that was a wee bit back to front, but anyway. 9.9, a Commission for Victims and Survivors invitation to launch a Better Together, reviewing the needs of victims and survivors of the Troubles. 9.10 was the Northern Ireland Assembly EU Affairs Manager, the Equal Treatment legislation, which we got a briefing on last week. 9.11, clerking and member support, member development and personal security information. 9.12 was the Northern Ireland Fiscal Council report, the public finances in Northern Ireland, and the comprehensive guide in November, that was published in November 2021, and that was the first report from the new Fiscal Council. So it was interesting just in how we spend our public finances here. I look forward to hear more from them in the future. 9.13, Northern Ireland's Women's European Platform. The Executive Office Strategy and Violence Against Women. And can I remind members that obviously, as we mentioned in the Forward Work Programme, that we are going to be meeting officials on the 26th of January 2022. I received that letter with interest. It was suggesting that we shouldn't go too quickly on developing that strategy on violence against women, and I think we'll probably hear more about that when we invite stakeholders in, just what their precise concerns are, and I look forward to hearing that with interest. And 9.14 is the Thompson travel. It was a follow-up to the oral briefing session on the 10th of November 2021, and I would refer back to the previous correspondence in 9.5 regarding passing this back to the Economy Committee. And I would say, with the new travel restrictions and new rules being brought in, we can see that the travel industry again is suffering as a result of the new variant, and travel restrictions as sort been brought in as well. So this is an industry that still requires help. So if I can just remind members, that the committee or suggested members that we write back to Sarah Thompson and or Sharon Thompson, and indicate that the committee has written to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister, who advised that the payment scheme has closed and the responsible staff dispersed. The department has no statutory or policy responsibility for travel agents or the travel industry, and remind that the committee has written to the Minister for the Economy and the committee has written to the Committee for the Economy. If members are happy enough for those letters, or that letter, to be sent to Ms Thompson. Okay, and 9.15, and I mentioned that in relation to the refugee strategy. It was regarding Horn of Africa, the provision of English for speakers of other languages and classes. And again, I would remind members that the stakeholder organisations will be appearing before the committee next week, so we'll probably be able to delve a little bit more into just the provisions of services for various stakeholder groups within the refugee asylum bodies. So, and the final piece of correspondence was 9.16, and was a statement from the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to Assembly in relation to the 36th British-Irish Council Summit that took place on Friday the 19th of November 2021. Members, are you happy to content to note the rest of the correspondence?
Yep.
And does anybody want to raise any of the issues listed? No. Okay, I suppose I'll leave item 10 and 11 after we get our briefing from the European Commission. I'm afraid to say his name because I get it wrong every time I say it.
He's just in the audience now.
Oh, is he? All right. Okay. That's good. Right. Okay, members, are you happy to move now to item number 7?
Yes.
We will move to an oral briefing from the European Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič. Nearly right. Can I refer members to pages 118 to 150 of the meeting pack and pages 73 to 84 of the table pack for the relevant papers. And can I advise members that this session is not being recorded by Hansard, but a video will be available on the committee webpage. Vice President, can I take this opportunity to welcome you again to our committee meeting? I appreciate you giving us your time, and I also appreciate the considerable work that has been undertaken by your team since you last briefed our committee on the 28th of June. Over the past 5 months, the UK and the EU teams have been engaged in an intense period of talks, and we appreciate that the protocol has been the most difficult part of those negotiations. So we look forward to...
He's there, but he's not there.
I think it's probably his office just testing the line before.
So he's not there?
He doesn't seem to be there.
Oh, right. Okay.
Says he's there.
Hmm? Yeah.
I know, we think his office will have connected to check.
Right, okay. For those listening on, I think he is connected, but he himself is not actually gone live. He is due to attend our committee at 4:30, so we probably will pause until such times that we know for sure that he comes to us live. He's still not there. Okay.
We can take a break, can't we?
Yeah. Okay, so members, can we just pause for a break? That's good.
How long for, Chair?
Well, he's not actually due.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.
to press the button, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Live again.
Good afternoon, Vice President, and thank you very much for agreeing to come again and address our committee meeting. I appreciate you giving us your time, and I also appreciate the considerable work that you and your team have undertaken since you last briefed the committee on the 28th of June. Over the past 5 months, the UK and the EU teams have been engaged in an intense period of talks, and we do appreciate that the protocol has been the most difficult part of those negotiations. So we look forward this afternoon to understanding your assessment on the current status of the negotiations and the pathway to resolving outstanding issues. And indeed, if in your assessment more compromises can be found. And now I know your time is precious here and you're under a bit of pressure on your own end, but can I hand it over to you, Vice President, to brief our committee? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I also would like to greet the dear co-chair and, of course, honourable member of the Legislative Assembly. And, of course, it's a pleasure for me to meet you again. And I really would like to thank you for yet another opportunity to exchange the views with you on the implementation of the EU-UK withdrawal agreement, and, of course, in particular, on the protocol of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And indeed, Madam Chair, as you just mentioned, a lot has happened since our last virtual exchange in June. But I still think that it's very important at such a formal occasion like we have right now to reaffirm that there is very clear EU's overarching objective, and that is to establish a positive and stable relationship with the United Kingdom. We remain partners with shared values, and we will have to tackle a number of global challenges side by side. I think that recent very clear example was the very important debate of COP26 in Glasgow. But as you know, the implementation of the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, which is an integral part of the withdrawal agreement, as it was agreed and ratified by the United Kingdom government and the Parliament, is not without significant challenges. And you will also know that the withdrawal agreement is intrinsically linked with our EU-UK trade and cooperation agreement. I want to underline that the EU has always been and remains fully committed to protecting Good Friday Belfast Agreement in all its parts, and that is why the EU continues to work relentlessly to find workable solutions to the problems created by Brexit, and I would say the form of Brexit which the UK government chose, and we do it in the interest of people and businesses in Northern Ireland. As you are, I'm sure, very well aware, the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland seeks to avoid the hard border on the island of Ireland. It aims to protect the integrity of the EU single market and, in particular, to safeguard the Good Friday Belfast Agreement in all its dimensions. And we are working hard indeed, to preserve all these gains. The benefits of the protocols are immense. Goods produced in Northern Ireland have access to both EU's single market and UK's internal market. And these two markets combined represent a market of more than 500 million consumers with unparalleled purchasing power. 70% of Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce members, for example, believe that the Northern Ireland's unique status presents opportunities for the region. And this was underscored by the most recent economic figures for Northern Ireland reported by the UK Office for National Statistics yesterday. Dual market access and advanced legal system, some of the best universities in Europe, advanced telecom infrastructure and pro-business environment and competitive operating costs, proximity to major markets make Northern Ireland a unique place to invest. And these elements, when combined, provide a powerful incentive to attract investments from overseas. And we have seen the recent examples of it in pharma and packaging businesses. These major advantages can be too easily forgotten, especially in the heated political debate. And therefore, we have been engaging constructively on the legitimate issues of concern to people and businesses in Northern Ireland. Over the course of this year, we have been showing flexibility and creativity in finding solutions within the framework of protocol. My team and I have been meeting all political parties on the executive on various occasions, engage frequently with the Northern Ireland civil society and listen carefully to businesses during our numerous meetings. During my visit to Northern Ireland in September, I had the privilege to see the situation firsthand. And I'm well aware of the positive values civil society and businesses in Northern Ireland attach to the protocol. Yes, it's not perfect, but it is the best response to the UK's decision to withdraw from the EU and the form of Brexit the government has chosen. Recognizing that there are things we can do to alleviate some of the challenges, on 13th of October, the Commission put forward a package of bespoke solutions addressing the main issues raised by the people and businesses in Northern Ireland, namely a long-term solution for uninterrupted supply of medicines to Northern Ireland, proposals to strengthen the role of Northern Ireland stakeholders and authorities in the dealings with the protocol, a long-term comprehensive solution in the sanitary and phytosanitary area, resulting in the removal of up to 80% of identity and physical checks previously needed, further facilitation and simplification for east-west trade in the custom field, where we aim at 50% permanent reduction of all paperwork. Our proposal will deliver significant changes. They amount to a new model for the implementation of the protocol and can deliver a real difference for all people and businesses in Northern Ireland. Our package of 13th of October would foster the enhanced opportunities that stem from being part of the UK, as well as benefiting from the unique access to the EU single market for goods. To answer the needs of people and businesses in Northern Ireland, we are even changing our own legislation, for example, to ensure the continued supply of medicines to Northern Ireland. As our package shows, there is no need to renegotiate the protocol to address the problems people experience on the ground. Let us not forget that the protocol represents a compromise the EU and the UK found after long and difficult negotiations on an orderly UK withdrawal from the EU. Solutions are available within its framework, and since the publication of our proposals, the Commission has engaged in intensified discussion with the UK to identify common ground for a way forward. This is because we believe in partnership and in the benefits of joint solutions. And we continue to remain focused on identifying practical solutions to the real issues that people and businesses face in Northern Ireland in our talks with the UK. We made an important move towards the UK with far-reaching proposals for solutions. We need the UK government to reciprocate this now. We have no time to lose. And what is most pressing is the need to ensure continued supply of medicines from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. We have put the solutions on the table. We've been listening carefully to the pharmaceutical industry, and you would probably recall that I made a promise during my visit to Belfast in September, where I said that I would do whatever it takes to solve this very important issue, including amending our own rules, and I will keep my word, and our UK partners know that. Political and technical discussions are continuing. David Frost and I will speak again this Friday, and I can assure you that I'm sparing no efforts to reach solution. We will remain calm and constructive, but also firm. The EU stands united. Our commitment to the Good Friday Belfast Agreement is absolute. A key prerequisite for this is avoidance of hard border on the island of Ireland. On the other hand, we have proposed a solution that addresses the legitimate concerns of businesses in Northern Ireland to allow for smooth trade from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. Our proposals do that at the same time as they are ensuring that the EU consumers are protected. We hope that the United Kingdom government will follow down the path of engaging to find solution, because this is in everybody's interest. Now it's not the time anymore to insist on things that civil society organization or businesses have not identified as a problem in my numerous engagements with them. Things that we, the Commission, European Parliament, Member States, have unanimously made clear are not on the table, like renegotiations of the protocol or changing the role of the European Court of Justice in the application of single market rules, because now it's time to act and to act on the things that matter to the people, like the uninterrupted supply of medicines. The EU, for one, is putting all its energy into getting a solution. Our ultimate goal is to provide predictability, stability, and certainty for the people of Northern Ireland, and we are absolutely convinced that our package does exactly this. And with this last remark, I once again would like to thank you very much for your kind invitation, for the opportunity to exchange with you, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussions and to your questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice President, for your very open appraisal of the current situation. And I fully appreciate that the EU and the UK are still engaged in a process and it's ongoing. And whilst significant progress has clearly been made, there does appear to be still some more work ahead. And it's fair to say the Northern Ireland protocol does tend to inflame passions here and has heightened political tensions. But I believe that all members of this committee have the interests of our constituents at heart. And in our constituents, we all have businesses and we all have workers and employers and employees. And we want to find solutions that will benefit all our people and the people that we represent. So in that vein, can I ask, we have seen many companies here in Northern Ireland that are increasing their sales into Ireland and into the EU. And many of them are actually picking up business from GB retailers who are choosing local producers here in Northern Ireland rather than importing goods into Northern Ireland. So what commitments can you give to our Northern Ireland firms if the UK and the EU cannot reach agreement in this present round of talks? Or if the UK, for example, take unilateral action, such as triggering Article 16, what commitments can you give to our businesses here on the ground that have made those new business relationships and explored new supply chains?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for your, I think, very important questions. Of course, I know that we have the protocol in place just something over 11 months, but I think that if you look at the official stats from the UK Bureau of Statistics, the recent investments, but also the information you can get from investment.ni portal, you see that the businesses in Northern Ireland, but I would say as far as United States, Canada, or of course almost all EU member states recognize that having this dual market access is actually unique opportunity. And I think that opportunity and all the qualities of Northern Ireland I referred to in my introductory remarks are indeed created something like of a positive investment buzz among the international investors. And I think that's very good, and that's very positive sign. And I think knowing how important the agenda of levelling up for the UK government is here, I think levelling up is indeed happening, and I think we should be very happy about it. And of course, if it comes to the supply to the supermarket, I think that's what I think you can hear when you talk to the business leaders is that, of course, if I can get the high quality products with the lowest transportation costs, with the lowest possible carbon footprint, which is becoming increasingly important factor in doing business, and they're actually fresh because they are locally grown, I think better for the consumer and better for the customers who are purchasing these products in the supermarket. So I think that again, this is the positive sign, and this is, I would say, good thing that is happening, and we are actually trying to achieve exactly that in the EU with our farm to fork strategy, how to shorten the distance from the grower producer to the table of the consumer. So I think that even after 11 months, we already have quite a few positive signs that the unique opportunity which we decided together with the UK for the benefit of the island of Ireland and for the Northern Ireland economy is actually already delivering the results. Therefore, I just would like to kind of redouble our efforts how to deliver to the Northern Irish businesses exactly what I hear and every single interaction I have with them, because the business leaders are telling us, please sit together, be constructive, find a solution to our problems, because we need stability, predictability, we need legal certainty for our businesses, and we know that in that case it would be of a very important benefit to our economy. So this is where I want to go, and this is what my message to David is. And concerning the negative scenario, I'm trying to stay out of it, because I think that we should focus all our energy on the positive solution. But I think even in this discussion, what is very important to remember is that when we've been having this extremely challenging and difficult and tense negotiations with the UK about the withdrawal from the EU, there was very clear sequence, which we all recognize. That first we have to have orderly withdrawal. We have to find the best possible solution for the Northern Ireland, for the island of Ireland, to avoid the border. And on this basis, we will build this superstructure, which is a trade and cooperation agreement. And of course, if you pull away the basis and basics of our relationship between EU and UK, then you have a problem. And I do not want to go in that direction, because, of course, I think that for the businesses in the Northern Ireland, the best news would be if we find the good solutions We believe that we offered a lot on our table, and that we would come back to them with good news. We solve it, we put it into practice, and of course we are ready to constantly assess how it works. Therefore, we created the 5 specialized committees under the Joint Committee and 19 specialized committees under the Partnership Council, because we know that our relationship is massive, and we know that implementation of our agreements will not be easy, that we would have problems here and there. But exactly for that, we have this structure so we can de-dramatize the way how we solve our problems. We can use the expertise of our experts, and in the end to give the political steer. But the priority should be solve the problem, and solve the problem in a way that it's best for the people of Northern Ireland. And that would be a bit extensive, but probably the best answer I can give you this evening.
Thank you very much, and I would totally agree. We do need predictability and stability within our business community, and it has been a state of flux now since 2016. It seems to be, as we approach Christmas every year, there's another time limit on our business community, and that's not conducive to the needs of our businesses and for our employees as well that are working in there. Just on the basis of you talked about the withdrawal agreement and that and the trade and cooperation agreement. This committee has found that there is a really lack of transparency in the governance structures around that. What role do you see for elected representatives here within the current structures that have been put in place around the WA and the TCA?
Thank you very much, Madam, for that question as well, because indeed this was one of the issues we discussed at length during my visit to Belfast, where we've been talking to all the leaders of the political parties in Stormont Castle, but also to the business leaders and civic societies. What I would highlight here is that what's very important to say at first, that the withdrawal agreement, the protocol, and also the TCA being negotiated after lengthy discussions between EU and UK, democratically approved after mutual consent by both European Parliament and Westminster. And there is this very clear democratic insurance valve in the protocol when every 4 years there will be clearly the time for democratic consent if it comes to the continuation of certain articles in the protocol. On top of it, I think that it would be extremely useful for both EU and UK to use the established structures for both agreements, the Joint Committee and Partnership Council. And once we had this session, we always made sure that the First Minister and First Deputy Minister would always get the floor and be part of this discussion. And if you would recall, Madam Chair, we also devoted one of our set of proposals for even more improved involvement of the Northern Ireland representatives in the dealing of the protocol. One aspect would be, of course, the contacts between the elected representatives, where we would be ready to establish the structured dialogues between Northern Ireland stakeholders, representing authorities, civic societies and businesses, and the Commission. We have now ongoing discussion what would be the best setup for EU-UK parliamentary cooperation, and what would be the best way how to also accommodate clearly the interest of Northern Ireland MLAs in this discussion. But here we have to find the solution with the UK, and of course it would be good to find the solution within the UK, how it would be more appropriate for these discussions to take place. I also know that there is a huge interest from the civil service, from the business communities to be better informed and more involved in our discussions in the EU on current or future legislative proposals. And what we are suggesting is to have a special consultation procedure, special for Northern Ireland, where we would take particular attention to your comments in our public consultations, where we are ready to improve the work of the joint consultative working group, where we are ready to provide you with additional answers if needed, and create a special website where all the legislative acts which might be applicable for Northern Ireland would be very clearly distinguished, so it would not be a hassle or difficulty for Northern Irish businesses or political leaders or civil servants just to check what is on the agenda, what is actually applicable, and to make it as easy as possible. So there is a lot of opportunities how we can do that. I just really would like to reassure you on our goodwill to be as close to you as possible, as acceptable to the UK government, as conducive to our mutual relations. And there have been a lot of ideas which have been put on the table, and I will be very happy if we would have the chance to discuss them, because right now we are focusing on, I would say, other topics, but I recognize that this is one of the issues which is very important for Northern Ireland.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer, and we look forward to exploring those opportunities, because the voice of the business community, civic society and the political representatives needs to be centre to issues that affect us here in Northern Ireland, and we must look at ways to do that. We have been engaging with the UK government and finding it actually pretty difficult to get them to recognise that as well, and to give that reach out, particularly around the Parliamentary Partnership Agreement, and that they're talking about the devolved nations having an observer status, and that's really not quite effective for us here in Northern Ireland when there is so much involved in our particular set of circumstances. So can I now ask the Vice Chair, John Stewart, to come into the spotlight, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Vice President, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. Appreciate your time and for taking questions from us this evening. I don't want to keep you too long because I'm conscious of your time and other members' opportunities to come in. The first issue I have is the supply of medicines. It is absolutely critical for Northern Ireland's health service and also for its people. The clock, Vice President, is rapidly running down, and the proposals put forward by the European Commission simply don't go far enough. I know you touched on this during your presentation. It was September, you were here previously, it's now December. When are you going to solve the issue of medicines? Why not just remove medicines from the protocol completely? Surely you must agree that the integrity of the EU single market is not affected by medicines coming into Northern Ireland, and hopefully agree with me of the seriousness to sort out this issue as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart, for your questions. I think if it comes to the medicine, we fully recognise the urgency of this matter, and you would, I'm sure, recall that our proposal how to solve this issue was put on the table already on the 30th of June, and I was very conscious of the UK stand on this issue, which, if I can characterize what is very important for us, is not only the content, also the process, and the fact that we have to show that we are jointly arriving at the solutions, which I fully respected. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are still discussing the matters. What I think was very important for the Northern Irish people was to make sure that all across the UK, the people would have the access to the same medicine at the same time, and the system of the NHS is no way affected. And we found the solution to all these questions, and we found it within the protocol. Therefore, I think that it would be much better to focus on the practical solution of this matter, because carving out certain sectors from the protocol would amount to the renegotiation of the protocol. And very honestly, I do not have the mandate for that. And we've been negotiating the protocol for years to come. And therefore, when we are offering the solution which tick all the boxes which I know are important for uninterrupted supplies of medicine to Northern Ireland, my strong recommendation and of course the preference would be to go in that direction.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
It is just the timings do just concern me, and I appreciate that you are looking at it, but I just don't think it's fast enough. Both the British Manufacturers Association of Pharmaceuticals and the Republic of Ireland have said that the snail's pace that this is going at is not working, and that the pharmaceutical industry and the import of medicines could well be affected. So I would urge with every possible efforts that you could to address this. My second point, you highlighted, Vice President, about the ongoing consultation that you've had, and a lot of that, and I'm grateful for it, has been with both civic and political unionism. I'm just keen to get a flavour for how the concerns of civic and political unionism, and they've been well aired by myself, my party and others about the protocol, how, following your consultations, they have impacted and influenced your approach to the current negotiations in an attempt to find a solution that works for everybody, to quote yourself in the past.
Thank you very much, sir. If you allow me, just on your first question, because we have total agreement on the urgency of the matter. That I very clearly would like to reassure you on that, and therefore, I mean, the last I would say 3-4 weeks, this is for me number one agenda item in our discussions with David Frost, and I would, of course, 100% prefer if you can present these good solutions as a joint approach, which actually solve the problems for the Northern Ireland. But I'm fully conscious of time. I know that time is running out, and I will push again this Friday in the discussion with Lord Frost to solve this matter. But at the same time, I also have to be very, very clear that we are ready to move on our own, if that would be not possible, to push at this stage on the joint approach. And talking about the time gap and the pharma industry, again, I would like to reassure you that we have extensive consultations with the pharmaceutical industry, and what we hear from them is that the proposals we put on the table are solving their problems. I'm fully conscious of certain time which would be needed to approve this legislation, but we are looking for additional also legal safeguards to make sure there will be no gap whatsoever in supplying the medicines to Northern Ireland. And this was the way how we also informed the pharma industry, and I believe that the concerns in these regards been calmed down, and therefore you would understand also my insistence on this issue when I'm talking to my UK counterparts. If it comes to the civil and political unionism, here that what I really want to say is that for us, very clearly, I mean, the reflection of our positions being jointly approved by the EU and the UK in the first articles of the protocol. which says that we respect territorial integrity, we respect constitutional arrangement, and we want to deliver the solutions which are working for all communities in the Northern Ireland. Therefore, for us, such a primary topic was to avoid the hard border on the island. And these are, I would say, the key prerogatives. These are for us the key criteria with which we are entering any discussions, any negotiations, and which have been our guiding principles all along the very long and sometimes very difficult negotiations. And I just really would like to assure you about our sincerity in this regard. We have no hidden agenda. I said very clearly, I do not need and I do not aim at any political victory. We just want this problem to be solved. In this regard, I can say that we want to get Brexit done, so we can actually move with our UK partners to discuss also, I would say, the issue of strategic importance of global responsibilities, which we both share, and to make sure that we will be creating and consolidating the opportunities for the Northern Ireland and reducing, minimizing, and if possible, getting rid of the problems which might be created by Brexit for the Northern Ireland. So that's our approach, and this is, our primary goals upon which we are working here in the Commission and with our EU member states and parliamentarians in the European Parliament.
Okay, thanks, Bank President. I mean, on that we are agreed. I want to find a solution as well that works for everybody. I just don't want to see any trade barriers or any restrictions east-west between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, and also in north-south. But I appreciate your time and conscious of the time as well. So I'll pass back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, for that. And can I open the questions now to Diane Dodds? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioner. It's very good to see you again and to hear from you. Although I must say we are disappointed that there is nothing essentially new in what you have told us today. I want to focus on two issues. And the first issue is that very important issue of consent. I am speaking to you today from a democratically elected assembly where all matters of substance or contention have consent gained through a cross-community vote, as the Belfast Good Friday Agreement indicates. And today you indicated your support, I noted it, that you wanted to see the Good Friday Belfast Agreement implemented in all its parts, and you even talked about in all its dimensions. So cross-community support is very important. However, in this House, no Unionist party gives consent to the Northern Ireland Protocol. And therefore there is no consent if we take consent as measured by the Belfast Agreement. There is no consent for the Irish Sea border. And there is no consent, or indeed democratic mechanism, for EU law being imposed on Northern Ireland. And there certainly is no consent for Article 6 of the Act of Union, as we heard in court yesterday, being subjugated to the Northern Ireland Protocol. So how will you work to resolve the issue of consent, and particularly the consent of unionism with the Northern Ireland Protocol and the democratic deficit that is created by it? So that's my first question. My second question to you is, quite rightly, you did today talk about not having heated political debate, but today President Macron is quoted as saying that for Ireland, the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol is a matter of war and peace. Do you condemn President Macron's statement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Dodds, for your question. I think that if you are looking at the democratic aspects of the protocol, I think what is very important to underline that EU and UK as to use the preferred language of our UK partners as sovereign equals, democratically negotiated, approved and ratified the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. And as you've been following this process very, very closely, so you know that there's been extremely detailed negotiations, that every single word, every single expression was discussed and negotiated and assessed from all aspects. So I'm sure that the both sides been adopting and approving this very important agreement in a full conscience and with a full political legitimacy and with complete democratic credentials and with overwhelming majority in the UK Parliament as it was in the European Parliament. So I think that from our side we did our utmost to make sure that this agreement's been approved and negotiated in the most transparent and democratic manner. I am, of course, fully conscious about the positions and the concerns of the Unionist community in the Northern Ireland. And what I'm trying to do is to demonstrate to the Unionist community that we have good answers to their concerns. I had several meetings with the top Unionist representatives, and I'm always open to further discussion because I'm sure that the Unionist community has also very much on the mind the benefits, the prosperity which the protocol can bring to the business community in Northern Ireland. And I know that your community has also on top of the mind a lot of different aspects, challenges and the issues to be dealt with. And I think that we are very clearly demonstrating that we are ready to deliver, to be extremely creative, to check our rules from inside out and even to change our own laws like we do in the case of uninterrupted supply of medicine to Northern Ireland. And then we can act extremely swiftly to solve the problems. So I hope that this continuous engagement, this openness, this extended hand for the cooperation with all communities and the key political parties in Northern Ireland will bring us into the situation where we can show by the real proposals and real solutions that what we mean is indeed to find the best possible solution for Northern Ireland. And I know that the politics is extremely difficult, but we will continue to do our best to work on these issues so we can convince the Unionist community that we are really acting here in a good faith from the beginning throughout the whole process. We do it now and we will also do it in the future. And of course, if we are talking about the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, I have to tell you that when I was visiting the beautiful island of Ireland, one of the lasting memories I brought from there being very dramatic pictures from Fleury Bridge. How the whole region looked 20-25 years ago and how it looks now, how this dramatic picture has been replaced by the thriving business community and by the people working very constructively and friendly on the both sides of the border and across the communities. And that was for me a very strong moment. You know that I'm actually coming from Slovakia, and I was growing up behind the Iron Curtain until I was 23. So I can very much relate to what it means if you have a freedom to travel, if you have a hard border, if you have no border, and if you are living in very, very difficult circumstances, and therefore I just want to tell you that also this my personal history is I would say testimonial to why I put so much attention and emphasis on peace, and this is what we as a EU and the European Commission are putting on the top list of all our priorities, and we will do our utmost to bring this as a concrete examples also to the community you represent and to all other communities in the Northern Ireland.
Commissioner, and just a very brief comment, because I accept your good faith and I accept that your own experiences shape some of what you do. But I think that we cannot go past the fact that for many in the Unionist community, this is also a matter of sovereignty, and that the protocol breaches that sovereignty and that internal market of the United Kingdom. You, and I, just a very quick response from you. You quoted some statistics published yesterday by the ONS survey. However, statistics published today in Northern Ireland tells us that there appears to be no evidence that the protocol allows Northern Ireland to enjoy the best of both worlds, and that is because of the trade barriers between us and our greatest market. So I think we should interpret some of the statistics that you quoted earlier with some caution. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And can we bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Vice President Šefčovič, for coming along and engaging with us today. I'd also like to thank you and the Commission for the very reasonable proposals that you have put on the table to try and resolve the outstanding operational difficulties. And I'd also like to thank you and commend you for your patience in dealing with the British government negotiators, who aren't noted for their integrity or honesty or good faith. I know it must be a difficult challenge for you, but I'm quite sure you're up for it. I suppose one of the fears some people have here is that those same negotiators that you're sitting across the table from have exaggerated the difficulties surrounding the protocol. Some will say it's raising community tensions, it's leading to unrest, it's doing economic damage to the north here, and even a figure of 850 million has been quoted as having been taken out of the economy here every year. But I was heartened to hear your introductory remarks where you quoted from the Chamber of Commerce here and the unique opportunities that they see in the protocol. The statistics that were released from the Office of National Statistics. And there's another report out this week also from the Irish Maritime Development Office that has found that the last 6 months have been the busiest on record for freight traffic into northern ports of Belfast, Larne and Warren Point. And that traffic is 11% higher than it was this time 2 years ago. So surely if the protocol was as difficult as some say, the results coming out from all of those groups that I have mentioned would be completely different. So I suppose, as I say, the fear is that negotiators are trying to leverage concessions from the EU on the basis of false information. But as I say, it's heartening to see that you have an idea of what the real picture is. And I'm just wondering, Is there a time limit on these discussions that are going on? Do you have a cut-off date when you think they're no longer viable? And I'm sure you're aware also that former members of the British government and advisors have suggested that it was always the intention of this British government to disregard and renege on any on any negotiations that had been concluded with the EU, and that they would engage in essentially perpetual conflict with the EU. And I'm just wondering, would you like to comment on that? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Also for your comments and the question. I think that just also underlines, and I would link it also with my previous answers, that to get to Northern Ireland, that enormous opportunity to have the best of both worlds, or it's one of the business leaders describe it to be in the situation when they would have the jam on the both sides of the bread. I think, of course, we need to work hard for that. I think that clearly the benefits of the dual axis are already showing. You mentioned some of the statistics, which I can confirm that trade is really picking up. And of course, we are fully conscious, and I heard it from the business leaders that have been very open that not all of them are planning right now or would plan in the future to do the trade with the EU. That for them, what is very important, this is intra UK GB NI GB trade, and I fully respect that, and it's absolutely okay. And of course, we need to make sure that the trade is as smooth as possible, and that we do it in a way that we can guarantee that, and guarantee also the integrity of the EU single market. That was, I would say, the basic logic and construction of the protocol. Having learned and gaining, I would say, the experience and listening carefully to the business community, I think that we pretty know what is important to do here. I was talking about stability, predictability, legal certainty, but I'm also talking about the need to have our joint efforts in cutting the customs formalities by half. We are ready to do that, and we hope that we'll get the sincere, intense engagement from our UK parts in that regards. And in this particular area, I think our experts are talking to each other, and I hope that we can find a solution. But the discussion is more difficult, I have to admit, is sanitary and phytosanitary controls, where we are proposing 80% of reduction of documentary and physical checks. I think this is pretty important. We are proposing to create the express lanes. So I think that if we work very well together, we would have very smooth operation within the UK GB and NI-GB, but also NI-EU. And at the same time, I can report to our member states that integrity of the single market is protected. So I think this should be our goal. We should focus on, and we think that we know how to deliver. What, to be very honest, could smoothen it further would be when we as a EU will finally get the real-time access to the IT systems, because I believe that after gaining initial experience, we can still discuss with our UK partners what else can we do, how we can improve the system. Once we would know what are the trade flows, what are the initial data, how can we assess them, because so far the access to the IT and data is rather limited. So that always goes smooth approach together with safeguards. And I was really hoping that with our proposals on the table that we would be indeed in a home stretch. And my ambition was that we should resolve these issues by Christmas. That was what I wanted. This is what I wanted to do. I believe that if there would be a genuine good political will on the both sides, we can clearly arrive at that goal. But from our side, I think you already know us quite well by now. We will focus on the solutions. We'll put all our energy into it. We are not working with artificial deadlines, but I think that sooner we resolve it, better it will be for the people in Northern Ireland, for the businesses in the Northern Ireland, and I think that there is a huge political dividend in resolving these issues as soon as possible, and that's remain our goal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for your positivity here today, and I wish you luck in your discussions with the British government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pat. And can I bring Christopher Stalford into the spotlight, please? Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your answers so far, Dr. Šefčovič. If you're prepared to see the abolition of so many of the measures that were contained in the initial agreement, why did you ask for them in the first instance?
Would you be so kind to repeat the question, because I lost the last part of it? I'm sorry.
If you're prepared to see the abolition of so many of the regulatory checks that were being talked about, why did you ask for them in the first instance?
Now I get your question. I think that you know what is important to say. I think that we have a strong echo. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can. I'll mute my microphone.
Thank you, sir. I mean, if it comes, I mean, to your question, I think again, what I have to say here is that in these very intense and difficult negotiations, what we've been, of course, looking at was how to make sure that we will have no hard border on the island of Ireland, and how we would make sure that Northern Ireland would have access to the single market for goods. And of course, to be on the single market, it means that the good is in Northern Ireland is not controlled by anyone else. So it could end up in France, in Slovakia, in Lithuania, everywhere. Nobody is going to check it. And of course, as you know, the single market is, of course, framed by very clear legislative framework. So it was only natural that the access to the single market clearly had to be done within the same framework, and the same processes are still needed. What we are doing here is that we are not abolishing the checks. We are actually looking for the ways in very, very creative manner how to make sure that we would reduce them, that we would make them as smooth as possible using IT databases, that it would present the least possible burden for the business community, and delivering on the need to protect the EU single market, and also all benefits the Northern Ireland has from being on the single market for goods. So that's a little bit what I think it's very important to clarify.
Yeah, I welcome the conversion, not necessarily of yourself, but I certainly welcome the conversion of some of the parties in Stormont. Apparently, IT databases and trusted trader schemes are now viable alternatives to trade friction. That hasn't been what they've been saying for the past 4 years. Obviously, the context of the reduction that is being advertised, the reduction of checks, that entailed obviously the full implementation of the protocol. So it's entirely possible that when the grace periods come to an end, it's entirely possible that while a percentage reduction of existing checks is being sort of talked about, that the overall number of checks will increase, isn't it, when the grace periods come to a conclusion?
I think that what clearly we would like to achieve here is a durable, long-lasting solution. So therefore, what we are proposing is to find the solutions on customs procedures, on the SPS check. And what I am suggesting is, as I said, 50% reduction of customs formalities, which of course are part of being on the single market, and 80% of cut in physical checks if it comes to the SPS. So I think that this is very important on what we have to focus, and I believe that if we put our proposals together, I believe that we would have even better solutions than we have current grace periods. And there is a lot of elements linked with that. And of course, it would be good to have more expert discussion on this matter, but our proposals are indeed comprehensive, and creation of the express lane and all that measures to smoothen further the NI, GB, GBNI trade are really possible, and that's what we are working for.
I appreciate that what we're talking about presently is the sort of wheels on the ground, moving stuff physically. Do you know that the biggest burden upon business is not necessarily the moving of the stuff physically, but it's actually the administrative burden, the filling in of the customs declarations, the filling in of the forms. Now, what indication can you give me that whilst the percentage of, or the number of physical checks taking place will be reduced, the requirement for filling in those forms will correspondingly be reduced by 80 and 50%?
Yeah, I think what what I want to highlight is that if you would imagine that it would be possible that you would have the goods to the UK market which are not cleared by customs and they are not checked by the SPS professionals. I think simply you want to uphold and maintain the integrity of the UK market to make sure that if it comes to public health, animal health, plant health, that simply your market would be protected, and we do the same. Because I mean this comes hand in hand with the fact that once the goods are in the Northern Ireland, they are not checked anymore in the whole EU, and therefore what we are doing here is to making sure that these checks and controls which are necessary, and we are really putting them to the bare minimum and using to the maximum the IT technologies, is done in the least obtrusive way. It could be done through the combination of trusted trader scheme, of express lane, and on making I would say the operations as smooth and seamless as possible. And I think that's honestly the way to go, because we need to make sure that also public health and animal health and plant health, all these are really controlled, because of course we bear responsibility for that.
Okay, can I just interrupt there, because I'm very conscious that the Vice President has given us a very time framed 1 hour, and we've now gone over that. And so can I just take this opportunity now, Vice President, to thank you for coming along to our committee this afternoon and keeping us abreast with the negotiations as they're unfolding. And we look forward to welcoming you back, and hopefully we will have positive conclusions to those negotiations, and that the flexibilities that we are hoping for are realised in the coming days and weeks, because the sooner we get to a stable marketplace, the absolute better for our businesses and for our people. Thank you very much, and we will be issuing an invitation for you to come back and brief the committee when those negotiations come to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we were told that he had just 1 hour, so I wanted to be respectful of his time as well. So we're just getting into the closing of the meeting. It's item number 10, any other business. Is there any other business from the members?
Yeah, just press release.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We do have an item of a press release. It was sent out yesterday. It was sent out yesterday evening. Just a press release that will go out from this committee, and the members get a chance to see it and sign it off. Are you happy to sign it off?
No, that's not.
Went out about 7 o'clock last night, maybe?
At 9.
Oh, was it? Oh. There you go, 9 o'clock last night.
Where did it go, Chair? Did it go into the table of papers, or?
No.
Oh, I'm glad somebody else did.
No, it just went straight to your email last night, yesterday evening at about 9 o'clock. I thought it was about 7, but there you go. That's just tells you all you need to know about my evenings.
Chair, I have to confess I haven't seen it myself. And in any event, I'm not sure we're quoted, are we?
We kind of got permission from Trevor before he left in relation to the press release. So if members want to take maybe time this afternoon or this evening to kind of have a wee read of it and give a wee email into the clerk, and he can issue it later on. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? I can assure you there's nothing too controversial in the press release at all. It's just an acknowledgement of the briefing this afternoon.
I'll send it around again.
In fact, the clerk has just indicated he'll send it around again, so it'll be at the top of your inbox. Okay. Date and time and place of next meeting. The meeting is scheduled to take place next Wednesday, the 8th of December at 2 p.m. at room 30.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Chair, just before you finish, I've just read the press release and I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Fair enough.
You happy enough? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland